Chapter 400. Woodrow's face immediately paled at the sight of the badge in Brandley's hand, and he stumbled back a couple of steps with horror in his eyes. All of the guards also stopped in their tracks upon hearing this. They looked at Brandley and the badge in his hand with awe and veneration in their eyes. A 7th-tier magic caster was powerful enough to easily wipe out all of them here. What was even more frightening to them was the badge in his hand, as well as the fact that it was a 4th-tier incident. A 4th-tier incident was already considered to be one of the top incidents in the Grey Temple, and even the City Lord's castle wouldn't be able to intervene, let alone the City Magistrate's manor. They had already lost the right to participate, and all they could do was await trial. All of the family members of the miners turned to Brandley with expectant looks in their eyes. A smile appeared on Mag's face as he looked at Brandley. It seemed that his efforts had not been in vain. "Master Brandley, you can't do this. That's against the rules. You're violating the rules," Woodrow yelled in an indignant manner. If the Grey Temple were to classify this incident as a 4th-tier incident, then it would definitely be investigated thoroughly, and there would be no way for him to make a comeback. "Woodrow, please don't interfere with the Grey Temple's investigation. The rules of the Grey Temple govern how incidents are handled. Now, all of the guards of the City Magistrate's manor can stand down. You may be involved in a 4th-tier incident, so your movements and areas of activity are restricted. Please stand still and cooperate with the investigation." Brandley looked at Woodrow with a serious expression as 2 of the Grey Temple's patrol guards stepped forward and stood on either side of Woodrow. "I'm an official of the City Lord's castle. You have no right to restrict my freedom. I want to go to the City Lord's castle. I want to see the City Lord." Woodrow turned and tried to leave. "Please cooperate with the investigation. Otherwise, we'll have to take disciplinary measures against you." The 2 patrol guards placed their hands on his shoulders with serious expressions. "You're framing me. I don't accept this. I want to see the City Lord. I want to." Woodrow struggled, trying to break free from the hands of the 2 patrol guards. "There's no need for you to go to the City Lord's castle. The City Lord has ordered that the Grey Temple will be given full authority to investigate this matter, and everyone in the City Magistrate's manor will cooperate with the investigation. The family members of the deceased miners must be treated with due respect." Right at this moment, the sound of galloping hooves sounded. Dicus rode in from outside the crowd and looked down at Woodrow as he said, "Woodrow, the City Lord is very disappointed in you." When Woodrow heard this, he immediately sat on the ground as cold sweat flowed down his face. His lips trembled as he shook his head. "It's not like that, Sir Dicus, it's not like that. Help me talk to the City Lord. I'm his most loyal dog, I'm only loyal to him." Woodrow's lips trembled as he shook his head. "The City Lord's castle's Dicus cut him off as he dismounted from his horse. He looked at Brandley, and said, "Master Brandley, I'm here on orders from the City Lord to assist the Grey Temple in this case." "Thank you for your understanding, City Lord." Brandley nodded in response before turning to the family members of the miners as he said, "The Grey Temple always handles cases in an impartial manner. Now, we're going to interrogate all of you, and everything you say will be used as evidence in a court of law, so you have to take responsibility for your words. We won't accuse any good people, and we won't let any bad people get away, either. Please trust us." The family members of the miners looked at Brandley with hesitant expressions. "I am Ebenezer, and I'm 13 years old this year. My parents died in a mining accident 4 years ago, leaving me and my 2-year-old sister behind." The young man was the first to step forward. The entire scene was extremely silent, and the only sound that could be heard was the young man's sobbing. Everyone's expressions began to become enraged, and they looked at the young man with pity in their eyes. However, when they looked at the people standing behind him, there was a hint of fear in their eyes. "I feel like she's still looking at me, and she wants me to take her to catch butterflies." The young man looked up at a small butterfly fluttering above his head, and hesitated momentarily before extending a hand. The butterfly circled around him a few times and stopped on his fingertip for a while. Then, it flapped its wings and flew away. It flew towards the sky, and kept flying, and kept flying. "Don't worry, child, your sister won't die in vain." Brandley clenched his fists as he did his best to calm his voice. He nodded, and said, "Next. My name is Harold, and I'm 65 years old. 4 years ago, my son." An elderly man made his way forward and began to recount his story. One by one, the stories that made people sigh in anger came out of their mouths. It was like a heavy punch to everyone's heart, making it hard for them to breathe. "They're lying. They're." Woodrow's face became paler and paler as he struggled to his feet. "Shut up," Brandley yelled coldly with a serious expression. "Take him and all the guards of the governor's manor back to Bastille prison. Clean up the crime scene and settle the families of the miners properly. After that, summon them one by one, examine their criminal records, and give them justice." "Yes." Everyone from the Grey Temple replied in unison before tying Woodrow up with ropes. All of the guards from the governor's manor also had their weapons confiscated, and were huddled together with their heads bowed. "What a bastard." Dicus also clenched his fists with rage. "He killed my nephew, and has also killed many people. Didn't the Grey Temple say that you won't let any bad people go? Then arrest him as well." Woodrow was completely immobilized, and he roared at Meg. Brandley looked at Woodrow with a serious expression, and said, "We still need to investigate whether Mr. Mag killed your nephew or not. However, if Mr. Mag really did kill such a vicious man, then he's a true hero. He deserves to be applauded and praised, just like how he sent you to prison." "Mr. Meg, what are you doing here?" Dicus finally noticed Meg, and was surprised to see him here. "Master Dicus, I didn't think we'd meet again so soon." Meg was also a little surprised, and a resigned expression appeared on his face as he said, "I came here with Amy to invite her friends to a party, but they just so happened to encounter a bully who tried to take her for himself, and that's how this happened. The City Lord's castle is very sorry about this, and we would also like to thank Mr. Mag for protecting the safety of the commoners. We'll be sure to get to the bottom of this, and we won't let any of the bad guys get away." Dicus looked at Mag with a serious expression. "I certainly hope that's the case. The City Lord's castle should reflect on this. If the law is handed over to an individual, then his existence is meaningless." Meg also looked into Dicus' eyes with a serious expression. "I'll pass on your message to the City Lord." Dicus nodded. Chapter 401. Woodrow was taken away, along with all of the disarmed guards. Soon, more people from the Grey Temple arrived, and began to record the names of the families of the deceased miners. Not long after that, people from the City Lord's castle also arrived, but they didn't participate in the investigation. Instead, they delivered food and clothing to the families of the deceased miners. As they munched on their bread, a hint of life finally returned to their faces, and the pain that had been building up in their hearts for many years finally had a place to vent. "Mr. Mack, there are a few details about that duel that I have to ask you about. How did you kill that second-tier knight?" Of course, he was already disqualified as a knight last year. Brandley turned to Meg with a question. If it really was as everyone had said, then Meg had killed Warwick with a peach tree branch, then he was at least a third-tier knight. "It was actually Amy who did it. I was only putting on an act." Meg looked at Amy, who was eating bread with Jessica, and smiled. At a time like this, he naturally had to shift the blame to Amy first. "So that's how it is. Little Boss is really a little hero who gets rid of evil and brings peace to the good." An enlightened expression appeared on Brandley's face. If it really was Amy who did it, then everything made sense. Meg really didn't look like a third-tier knight. Brandley turned to Mag with a sincere expression, and said, "I would like to express my gratitude to all of you on behalf of the Grey Temple. Last time, you helped to subdue a serial killer, and this time, you've done a great service to Chaos City. You're welcome." Meg nodded with a grave expression as he looked at the people who were stuffing bread into their mouths, and said, "I'm a little curious. Just how many cases like this are taking place in Chaos City? This is a city of laws that promotes equality and freedom. If the laws have become a tool for some people, then won't the city become the cruelest prison?" Brandley nodded with a serious expression, and said, "The laws give everyone more freedom, and that's what the Grey Temple and the City Lord's castle have always been doing. However, just as you said, this incident has also served as a wake-up call for us. Some people are using the laws to do things that go against the original intent of the city. I'll report this matter to the higher-ups, and I'm sure the Lord will make a wise decision. All right, I hope to see a more beautiful Chaos City. I'll be taking my leave now. Mag nodded before pushing his bicycle toward Amy and the others. Amy's, thank you so much for saving us today. Rebecca had just received a few loaves of bread from a worker at the City Lord's castle, and she was just about to kneel down when she saw Mag making his way over to her. Jessica is Amy's friends, Meg said with a smile. Amy, can with us, with you, with you. Of course, please come in. Rebecca hurriedly nodded before holding Jessica's hand and entering through the door. Meg took a glance at the workers who were disposing of the corpses nearby before entering Jessica's house with Amy's hand in his. The room was a little dim, and there was only one room. There was a bed in the room, and a very small window from which light shone in. There was a small wooden table beside the bed, on which there was some cloth, needles, and thread. There was also a shabby little bamboo chair next to the table, and a small stove in the corner. There was a pot of porridge in the pot, and a small bag of rice beside it. Aside from that, there was nothing else in the room. Amy's father, please sit here. Jessica dragged the bamboo chair over with some difficulty. She looked up at Mag with her clear black eyes, and there was a hint of gratitude in her eyes. All right, thank you. Meg nodded with a smile before sitting down on the only chair in the room. The bamboo chair, which had been repaired many times with broken wooden planks, creaked, and he couldn't help but sit up straight. It would be awkward if the chair collapsed. Please have some water. We don't have anything to serve you at home. I'm really sorry. Also, the dragon coin you left on the lunchbox last time saved my life. I really don't know how to thank you. Rebecca filled a chipped bowl with water and handed it to Meg as she looked at Meg gratefully. Although the bowl was chipped, it was very clean. The water rippled slightly, and it was clear and transparent. Meg picked up the bowl and took a big gulp before looking at Rebecca with a smile. You're too kind. Are you feeling better? Rebecca, who was about 30 years old, already had many fine wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She looked a little older than her actual age, and her face was a little sickly pale. However, compared to the people outside who were as hard as stone, her expression was much more lively. Especially her pair of black eyes, which were as clear and bright as Jessica's. Her face was also very gentle, and it could be seen that she was a delicate and pretty girl when she was young. Although she lived in a place like this, Jessica was still lively and cute. Meg had already found the reason: she had a good mother. After eating the chicken soup you made, I felt a lot better. After that, I went to the clinic to get some medicine, and I'm more or less better now. Rebecca nodded gratefully and extended her hand. There was a gold coin in it. She said in a somewhat uneasy manner, when they were fighting over it, I only found one gold coin. I'll return your dragon coin to you. I've already taken on some sewing jobs. Although the money isn't much, I can save a little every day. In 2 months, I'll be able to return all the money to you. Take this money. Just treat it as a gift from me to Jessica. You can buy some good food for the child to eat. Meg shook his head and pushed Rebecca's hand back. It seemed that she thought they were here to ask for money. No, I have to return this money to you. Rebecca didn't withdraw her hand. She looked at Meg with a determined gaze. Yes, Amy's father. My father said that if you borrow something from someone, you have to return it. So, we'll definitely return the money to you. I can also help my mother with things. Jessica nodded with a serious expression on her little face. Chapter 402. That's right, Jessica, I'm officially inviting you to today's children's gathering. Father is going to cook so much delicious food for us. Amy nodded with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She looked at Jessica with anticipation in her eyes, and said, hurry up and open your present. I think you'll love it. You're going to a party? Jessica's eyes lit up as she looked at the dark-colored bag in her hands with curiosity and anticipation. She looked up at Rebecca, and asked, Mother, can I open it? Of course. Rebecca looked at her with an encouraging expression. Jessica held the bag with both hands as she made her way over to the bed. She then carefully untied the little bow that Amy had tied onto the bag. She tipped it over gently, and a little beige dress fell out. There was a colorful butterfly embroidered on the chest of the dress, and it spread its wings as if it were about to fly into the sky. Wow! What a beautiful dress! Jessica's mouth gaped open at the sight of the little dress on the bed. She was stunned for a while before turning around and hugging Amy tightly. Jessica, do you like it? Amy asked nervously. Yes, I love it. I have my own little dress now, and it's the most beautiful yellow one. Thank you, Amy. Jessica nodded as she hugged Amy tightly with tears welling up in her eyes. Rebecca turned her head away and wiped the corners of her eyes. She raised her head and blinked. Then, can you let go of me first? Ugly duckling looks like it's about to die, Amy said in a quiet voice. Meow tilde ugly duckling let loose a cry of despair. I'm sorry, ugly duckling. I forgot you were here. Jessica took a step back and stroked Ugly Duckling's head apologetically. It's all right, its head is very tough, Amy said nonchalantly. Meow tilde Ugly Duckling looked at Amy with a resentful expression. I'm the one who's about to die. Then I'll wear this dress to the gathering this afternoon. It's so beautiful, I've never received such a beautiful gift before. Jessica looked at Amy with elation. Sure. You can also wear that beautiful butterfly hair clip. You'll look really good. Amy nodded in agreement. Meg watched as the two young ladies discussed the clothes and the delicacies that they would be able to eat in a while. A smile appeared on his face as the gloominess in his heart dissipated. As expected, as long as he was with his young lady, his mood would slowly improve. After playing for a while, Meg saw that it was about time to go back and prepare for the party, so he took Amy and said goodbye. I really don't know how to thank you. Rebecca stood at the door and looked at Meg with gratitude. Then let's let Jessica play with Amy more. She also wants to find someone to play with on her days off. Meg said with a smile. He told Amy and Jessica to say goodbye, and then he slowly pushed his bicycle out of the alley. The work at the Grey Temple and the City Lord's castle was still going on, but most of the corpses and blood had already been cleaned up. There were a few puddles of blackish-red water that indicated that something had happened here, but no one knew if the old man who had been killed by the car would be given a proper burial. The people who were eating bread looked at Meg and Amy with gratitude in their eyes. Even though they didn't say anything, their gratitude was written all over their faces. Father, they all seem to be very grateful to you. Amy smiled as she exited the alleyway. Half of them are grateful to Amy. If it weren't for the fact that Amy wanted to invite Jessica, we wouldn't have come here, Meg said with a smile as he got onto his bicycle and rode toward the restaurant with Amy. The autumn breeze was still as pleasant as ever, and the autumn sun was still as warm as ever. Hopefully, it would be able to warm the hearts of those people as well. In the conference room of the City Lord's castle, the atmosphere was extremely cold. All of the City Lord's castle officials had different expressions on their faces. Some were angry, some were concerned, and some were fearful. Brandley put down the piece of paper in his hand, and remained standing with reddened eyes. Michael sat at the head of the table with a cold and solemn expression on his face. From now on, Alva will be removed from his post and investigated. All of the information in the logistics department will be sealed, and a thorough investigation will be conducted into the embezzlement of the miners' compensation. Seal off the news, and ask the Grey Temple to assist in investigating all of the patrolmen's manners in Chaos City. Conduct a thorough investigation into those who use the law as a shield to oppress the citizens of Chaos City. Punish them severely. Raise the compensation standards for the families of the deceased miners and soldiers, and set up a department specifically to deal with this matter. Don't let the same thing happen again. Let me emphasize again. The laws of Chaos City are set up to ensure freedom and safety for everyone. If anyone dares to use them to oppress the citizens of Chaos City for personal gain, then I'll make them pay a price that's worse than death, regardless of who they are. Michael's hawk-like eyes swept over all of the officials present as he spoke in a cold voice. A tall and portly official sitting off to the side instantly paled, and he slid down from his chair onto the ground. No one dared to help him up. City Lord, I'll report this to the higher-ups right away, Brandley said respectfully before quickly departing. If those who uphold the law sit at the same table as those who destroy it, then the ones who will suffer are those who are supposed to be protected. Novan told me that back when he refused to enter the City Lord's castle. I didn't quite understand what he meant back then, but I suddenly understand now. The most destructive forces come from within. Michael took a glance at Alva with a self-deprecating smile on his face. Father, can I invite Big Sister 1111 and Big Bear one last time? Meg and Amy were about to reach home, and Amy was looking at the magic potion shop beside them. Of course, but I don't know if they'll have time to come. Meg stopped the bicycle with a smile. I'll go ask them. Remi climbed down from the car and greeted Charcoal and Green Pea. Then, she walked towards the magic potion shop with her short legs. Stupid fat cat, are you carsick again? Look at you lying on your back. You're so stupid, ha ha ha. Black Coal looked down at Ugly Duckling, who was lying on its back in the basket of the bicycle, and jeered. Meow. Ugly Duckling raised its head and let loose a cry at Black Coal. However, it had only just gotten up and extended its little paws when its body fell back uncontrollably. It was sprawled on all fours and looked up at the sky with a helpless expression, drawing another round of jeers from Black Coal. Even Meg couldn't help but burst into laughter. In the shop, 1111 was holding 2 bottles of magic potion as she looked at Amy with an elated expression, and said, Are you inviting me to a party? That's right, and Big Bear can come as well. Father will prepare a lot of delicious food. Amy nodded. She paused momentarily before extending a little finger, and said, They'll also have your favorite braised chicken. Then I'm going. 1111's eyes lit up, and she immediately raised her hand. However, she quickly lowered her hand with a hesitant expression, and said, But Master Julian went out this morning, and the shop has to be looked after. Chapter 403. What Amy said makes sense, but why does it sound a little sad? 1111 looked at Amy. Normally, no customers would come to buy magic potions at this time of the day, especially on a day when the restaurant was closed. Aside from the regulars, the restaurant was usually quite deserted. Then I'll take that as a yes, Big Sister 1111. Will Big Bear come? Amy asked with a smile. If I come, he'll definitely come too. But it's a gathering of children, so won't he scare them? Although I think he's quite handsome, 1111 said with a worried expression. It's all right. He's ugly, but he's also a little dumb. That way, he won't scare them. Amy shook her head nonchalantly. That makes sense. 1111's eyes lit up. However, a strange expression soon appeared on her face as she said, But, little Amy, you're too honest. Is that so? Father said that I have to be an honest kid. Only then will I be as pretty as Big Sister 1111, Amy said earnestly as she looked at 1111. I like how honest you are. You're so cute. 1111 rubbed Amy's face with a happy smile. Bye, Big Sister 1111. You have to bring Big Bear here at 11:30, Amy said happily as she turned and walked out of the restaurant. All right, I'll be sure to come. For my braised chicken. 1111 nodded solemnly. Father, Big Sister 1111 and Big Bear are back too. Shall we invite everyone? Amy came out of the restaurant and looked at Meg with a happy expression. Chem, we've invited everyone. You're the best, Meg. Let's go back and prepare to welcome the guests, Meg said with a smile as he stroked Amy's hair. Dear Princess Amy, can I attend your gathering? Charcoal poked his little head out and looked at Amy expectantly. And me, will I be lucky enough to receive an invitation? Green Bean also looked at Amy expectantly. Feeling a little embarrassed, she said, I've never attended a gathering before. If it's Green Bean, of course. I want to introduce you to my friends. They've never seen a talking bird before. Amy nodded with a smile. What about me? Charcoal asked. Charcoal, you can't do it. Amy shook her head. Why? I can speak too. Charcoal's voice suddenly elongated. Half of his body poked out from the gap between the railings of the birdcage and continued, and I can even sing. I can sing many, many beautiful songs. It's super powerful. But you're ugly. What if you scare the children? Amy shook her head and said worriedly, Uncle Blue Fatty will be bringing his unborn little sister along. It's not good to scare little friend. Patter tilde charcoal fell stiffly on the edge of the birdcage, rolling its eyes as it refused to accept reality. Meow, meow tilde ugly duckling cried out happily in the basket with a smug look on its face. All right, I'll let you come with us. Amy looked at Charcoal for a while before spreading open her hands in a resigned manner. She thought to herself for a moment before saying, "But I'm going to cover your cage with a black cloth. That way, you won't scare the children." "All right, I definitely won't run out." Charcoal immediately came back to life with full health. He immediately jumped up and was extremely happy. "Then let's go home first. Big Sister Mia and Big Sister Aisha are waiting for us." Meg smiled. Some of Charcoal's hair had grown back after being singed by Amy, but it was still ugly. "All right." Amy nodded before picking up Ugly Duckling in her arms. She made her way toward the restaurant as she yelled to Yarbemia and Sally, "Big Sister Mia, Big Sister Aisha, let's dance, spring is here again." Sally had changed into a cheongsam with golden fringes, which accentuated her long, snow-white legs, and gave her an air of elegance. Yarbemia, on the other hand, was dressed in a black maid outfit, which accentuated her cute white stockings. "Sure. I actually want to practice again. It's my first time dancing in front of others, and I'm so nervous." Yarbemia nodded. "I'm fine with anything." Sally nodded with a smile, appearing quite calm and collected. Meg pushed his bicycle past, and greeted the two of them before opening the door for everyone to enter. "Boss, what's the new dish you're making today?" Yarbemia immediately asked after entering the restaurant. "That's right, Father. What's the delicious dessert you were talking about?" Amy also asked. Sally was also looking at Meg. "You'll know when it's ready. Go ahead and dance. I'm going to prepare the food for the party. There are a lot of guests today." Meg shook his head with a smile before making his way toward the kitchen. "No matter what it is, as long as it's made by Father, it'll definitely be super delicious," Amy said with full confidence. "I think so too. Boss has never disappointed us before." Yarbemia nodded in agreement. "Then let's rehearse one last time before setting up the venue. We need an empty space for dancing, and we don't need so many tables and chairs," Sally said with a smile. "All right." Amy nodded. She placed Ugly Duckling on a nearby chair before running behind the counter to get the music box. Yarbemia and Sally began to set up the venue. They cleared out an empty space, and then put a few tables together to form a semicircle with the venue in the center. The music began, and Amy stood in the center while Sally and Yarbemia stood on either side of her. They began the final rehearsal of Elysium Jodo. Meg was in the kitchen preparing the food for the party later. There were a total of 17 people invited for lunch, which wasn't a lot compared to the usual guests. Furthermore, most of them were children, so there wasn't a lot of ingredients to prepare. "Amy, are you home? Ignatsu and I are here." A tender voice sounded as a series of knocks sounded on the door. At the entrance of the restaurant, Daphne, who was wearing a light green floral dress, raised her small hand and knocked on the door. Beside her, the little fat demon with a small bean sprout on his head looked at his own reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass with his mouth agape. He sucked in his stomach forcefully before releasing it and chuckling, causing the bean sprout on his head to jiggle with him. A tall and broad middle-aged man stood behind the two of them with a smile on his face. He looked up at the restaurant's signboard with a hint of surprise on his face. Chapter 404. A hint of surprise appeared on Guy's face at the sight of Amy. He looked at Amy, then at Daphne, and came to a sudden realization as he said, "So you're that little half-elf girl that Daphne always talks about." "Amy, do you know my grandpa? Why do you call him Grandpa Tiger?" Daphne asked with a curious expression. "That's right, Daphne. Father and I met Grandpa Tiger when we went out to play. He was wearing a tiger robe, so I called him Grandpa Tiger. I didn't think that he would be your grandpa." "That's amazing." Amy nodded with excitement on her little face. "She's the little magic caster that Grandpa told you about before. She roasted a bronze wild boar to a crisp with a single fireball, and he even gave you the boar's tusk as a gift," Guy said with a smile. Never would he have thought that the little half-elf girl that Daphne was talking about would be that little prodigy magic caster. This was simply too much of a coincidence. Wow, Amy, are you really that good? My grandpa said that the bronze wild boar was super ferocious. Its tusks were so long and sharp, yet you were able to roast it to death with a single fireball? Daphne looked at Amy with a shocked expression. You're that ferocious? Ignatsu's mouth also gaped open, and only after a long while did he swallow as he reflexively took a step back, as if he were trying to distance himself from Amy. Of course, I'm super ferocious, too. Amy nodded with an earnest expression before a vibrant smile appeared on her face. She spread open her arms and gave Daphne a hug as she said, but that's only toward bad guys. I'm not ferocious toward good friends at all. Did Amy hug me? Daphne's body stiffened as a faint blush appeared on her little face. She nodded with a shy expression as she replied, yes. I know. Amy is super good, super adorable. Daphne is also super cute, Amy said seriously as she looked at Daphne's face. Really? Daphne clutched the hem of her little dress as her face flushed with excitement. She looked up at Guy and said, Grandpa, give me my present. All right. Guy smiled as he took out a long box and handed it to Daphne. Amy, this is my present to you. Daphne's face as she handed over the long box to Amy with an expectant expression. What's this? Can I open it and have a look? Remi held the long box with curiosity written all over her face. I want to know, too. Ignatsu also came over and looked curiously at the long grey box in Amy's hand. Daphne of the world have a of course. Amy carefully untied the ribbon on the box before opening it, and a snowy white wand appeared before everyone's eyes. It would be a stretch to call it a wand as it could only be considered a simple handmade product made from the tusks of a bronze-skinned wild boar. The tusks were originally thick and long, but they had been polished into a thin and slender shape. However, the surface was a little rough, and there were 2 small notches at the bottom. There was a small purple ribbon tied around the bottom of the notch, and the words from Daphne to the cutest Amy were written in black handwriting. Wow! What a great wand! And it's tied with my favorite purple ribbon. I love it. Thank you, Daphne. Amy's eyes lit up as she carefully removed the wand from the box before turning to Daphne with an elated expression. Do you really like it, Amy? An elated smile appeared on Daphne's face, and a faint blush appeared on her face. A faint smile also appeared on Guy's face. He had spent a lot of time with Daphne during this period of time, and this was the first time he had ever held a magic stone and a carving knife in his hands. He knew that it was a little ugly, but he was still quite happy to be acknowledged. If this is a wand, then why do I feel like it's a little ugly? Ignatsu stroked his double chin as he murmured to himself. Ignatsu, do you have a death wish? Daphne turned to Ignatsu, and she looked as if she were a little lioness who was about to pounce on him. I'm just expressing my opinion. Ignatsu shrunk his head and quietly took 2 steps to the side. If you truly love life, stay away from crazy women. Of course not. I think it's super pretty, and I really like it. I didn't think that Daphne would remember that I wanted a wand. It really is awesome. Amy shook her head as she slowly raised the crude wand in her right hand. A streak of fire and a streak of ice flames intertwined like a pair of small dragons, creating a vibrant red and a vibrant silver. The purple ribbons of the wand were swept up by the wind, and the crude wand instantly became extremely dazzling and eye-catching. It's so beautiful. Amy really is awesome. Daphne's eyes widened as she looked at Amy with reverence in her eyes. I take back what I just said. Ignatsu's mouth also gaped open upon seeing this. What a kind child. A smile appeared on Guy's face as he looked at Amy. Thank you, Daphne. I really like this wand. It's my first wand, so I'll cherish it. Amy carefully placed the wand back into the box with a smile. You're welcome. This wand was made from the fang that you gave me. It really is quite interesting. Daphne chuckled. I also have a present for you. Give me your hand. Ignatsu's chubby little hand was clenched into a fist as he extended it toward Amy. What is it? Amy extended her little hand with a curious look on her face. Don't touch Amy's hand. Daphne warned in a quiet voice. Ignatius obediently raised his hand a little, and after Amy's hand was placed under his, he released his fist, upon which two objects fell into Amy's hand. They were a pair of flat and round seeds, one black and one white, and they resembled the black and white pieces of go. What are these, little bean sprout? Amy looked at the two seeds in her hand with a curious look on her face. Are they just two normal seeds? Daphne was also perplexed. Chapter 405. Amy's eyes lit up, and she solemnly placed the two seeds into the box that Daphne had given her. That's impressive. All right, I'll accept it then. Thank you, little bean sprout. You'd better not let it come into contact with mud and water. Otherwise, your house might explode, Ignatius reminded her. He then looked at Amy with a conflicted expression, and asked, also, why did you call me little bean sprout? I'm clearly older than you. Because you have a little bean sprout on your head. I think this little bean sprout is really cute, so I thought it would be best to call you that. Amy looked at the little green bean sprout on Ignatius's head with a smile. This is clearly a little sprout of the wisdom tree, not some little bean sprout. My father said that only the most talented tree demon would grow a tree of wisdom. This is the symbol of wisdom and talent, Ignatius said proudly. Then why are you always last in the exams? Amy asked, perplexed. Well, Ignatius felt as if he had been dealt a blow, and was speechless. He scratched his head, and said, actually, I don't want to compete with them. Otherwise, with my intelligence, I would have easily gotten first place. Daphne crossed her arms, and said with disdain, don't you feel ashamed saying something like that in front of the person who got first place? Ignatius blushed, and looked at Amy as he said, anyway, this is not a little bean sprout. It's the wisdom tree. If you must give me a nickname, then call me the wisdom tree. All right, little bean sprout. Amy nodded seriously. Wisdom tree. Wisdom little bean sprout. What the hell is that? It's still a little bean sprout. All right, I'll stick with little bean sprout. Ignatius had no choice but to accept reality. The little kids are already here. Parba, the big sister you've always been thinking about, is over there, and there seem to be two big sisters today. A horse-drawn carriage slowly stopped in front of the restaurant, and Gyurge lifted the curtains to look at the people standing at the entrance with a smile. Big sisters. Where is it? A little head popped out of the carriage. When she saw Amy and Daphne, she immediately opened her little arms and shouted happily, Big sis. He wanted a kiss. I want a hug. Raise it up high. You can't kiss me, hug me, or lift me up. Amy looked at Parba and rejected him coldly. Parba's happy expression immediately crumbled. He pouted and looked at Daphne pitifully. Not even Daphne. Before Parba could say anything, Amy had already rejected him on Daphne's behalf. She looked at Parba and said seriously, who isn't a baby? Baby. Baby, walk by yourself. Carry yourself. Parba sniffed and tried not to let his tears fall. Ha ha ha, what a cute little girl. Dear, is she the little boss you were talking about? She's really cute. A pregnant woman poked her head out of the carriage and looked at Amy with adoration in her eyes. She had no intention of standing up for her son at all. That's right, Miranda. She's the little boss. I'm sure you're carrying an adorable little princess in your stomach. Gyurge was still holding a little guy with a wooden pacifier in his arms. He nodded with a smile and nudged Parma, who was sitting beside him, as he said, Parma, why aren't you greeting everyone? Parma, why are you here? Daphne was a little surprised as she stood on her tiptoes to look at the horse-drawn carriage. Wasn't he very angry that he lost to Amy in mathematics last time? Ignatius murmured. They forced me to come. I actually didn't want to come at all. I just wanted to study at home. Studying makes me happy. Parma looked at the curious Daphne and Ignatius with an awkward expression. He didn't think that Amy would invite the two of them. But big brother. Father just said that there's a new dessert today. Didn't you get into the horse-drawn carriage yourself? Parba looked up at Parma with a perplexed expression. PFFFT. Ha 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 ha. Ignatius burst into laughter, and the rolls of fat on his little tummy jiggled uncontrollably. Palmer's expression stiffened upon hearing this. He looked at the innocent Parba, and said with a hint of anger, "I'm not going to carry you today, you can walk by yourself." He then jumped off the horse-drawn carriage as he spoke. Little Guy's ego really is getting stronger and stronger. He even knows that he can't embarrass himself in front of girls. Miranda looked at Palmer with a smile. Indeed. Gyurge nodded with a smile. He then gently patted Daphne's hand, and said in a gentle voice, "Sit down and don't move me, I'll come help you later." He then carried Parba to the ground before handing Angus over to a servant beside him. Only then did he carefully help Miranda down the stairs. "Wow, Uncle Blue Fatty, is this Auntie's baby sister?" Amy looked at Miranda's bulging tummy with a curious expression. "That's right. She already has 3 older brothers, so it must be a little sister this time." Gyurge nodded with a smile. "Little girl, do you like little sisters more than little brothers?" Miranda asked in a gentle voice as she looked at Amy. "That's right. Little sisters are cuter and more fun to play with. I really like little sisters." Amy nodded with an elated expression. "Then when I give birth to a little sister, I'll get her to play with you. I brought you a little present today." Miranda accepted a small golden bracelet from Gyurge before gently putting it on Amy's little hand. The golden bracelet was intricately crafted, and it was even more dazzling against Amy's snowy white skin. "What a beautiful bracelet, it looks so good on Amy." Daphne praised before looking at the long grey box in Amy's hand with a conflicted expression. Her present seemed to be a little ugly. "Thank you, Auntie. I really like this bracelet, as well as the presents from Daphne and Little Beansprout." Amy waved the bracelet in her hand in an obedient manner before holding onto Daphne's little hand, and saying, "Please come in. Even though not all of the guests are here yet, you can all sit in the restaurant." Daphne's eyes immediately lit up again, and she looked at Amy with glowing eyes. "Sure, it's my first time coming to a restaurant." Miranda nodded with a smile before holding on to Gyurge's hand as they made their way into the restaurant. "Darling, you said there were only 2 types of delicacies in the restaurant, is that really true? Mr. Max said that he's going to release a new dish today, so there might be more." Gyurge's expression stiffened slightly as he suddenly realized that he seemed to have forgotten something very important. Chapter 406. "Father, Daphne, Little Beansprout, and Auntie gave me a beautiful present," Amy said to Meg as soon as she entered the kitchen. "Did Amy thank them properly?" Meg made his way to the kitchen with a smile. "Of course I did." Amy nodded vigorously. "Hey, it's you, Uncle." Mag's gaze fell on Guy, and he was also rather surprised. He then turned to Daphne, and smiled as he said, "What a strange fate. I didn't think we'd be so lucky, either." Guy nodded with a smile. "Welcome, everyone, and a few other guests. Please take a seat first," Mag said to everyone with a smile. "Please take a seat," Yarbemia said with a smile as he pointed at the crescent-shaped tables and chairs. "What a beautiful restaurant. This must be the most beautiful restaurant in the entire Aden Square, right?" Miranda sat down with Gyurge's help, and her eyes lit up as she looked around the restaurant. "Yes, Mr. Mac's restaurant is the most beautiful, and it's usually very lively. You have to wait in line to eat here." Gyurge nodded with a smile as he gently rocked Angus in his arms. The little guy looked around with his big brown eyes before settling his gaze on the beautiful chandelier above. He stared intently at it, and a smile appeared on his little face. Palmer and Parba sat down on either side of the two of them. Palmer chose a seat in the furthest corner, and looked out the window with a cold expression as if he were contemplating something. Daphne and Guy also sat down, and both of them stared at Ugly Duckling with wide eyes. This orange kitten was so adorable that they wanted to hug it. "Do you want to play with Ugly Duckling?" Amy asked the two of them after putting away the presents. "Yes." Parba was the first to raise his hand. "Yes." Daphne and Ignatsu also nodded. Amy walked over to the reluctant Ugly Duckling, and placed it on the ground with a smile as she said, "Then go ahead and play with it." "Amy, you're the best." Daphne exclaimed happily. She squatted down and stroked Ugly Duckling's head with a radiant smile. "Kitty, you're so cute. I want to hug you." Parba was still a little wobbly as he walked. He squatted down and reached out his short arms to hug Ugly Duckling. Ugly Duckling rolled its eyes at Paba, and took 2 nimble steps back to avoid his hug. "Don't run. I don't want you to hug me. I want to hug you," Paba said anxiously. He took a few more steps forward and reached out his little hand again. Ugly Duckling took a few steps back and hid behind Amy. "Ugly Duckling rejected your hug and rolled its eyes at you," Amy said with a shrug. "All right, even so, I'll still like you," Paba said sincerely. "Little girls are so adorable. I hope our next one is also a little girl." Miranda rested her chin on her hands as she looked at Amy and Daphne with envy on her face. "Yes, it'll definitely be a daughter this time," George said as he looked at Miranda with a gentle expression. "Amy, we're here." Someone knocked on the door, and 1111's voice sounded at the same time. "It's Big Sister 1111 and Big Bear." Amy's eyes lit up, and she ran over to open the door. "Thank you, adorable little Amy, for inviting us to your party." 1111 was wearing a white dress, and she was holding a flower wreath. She placed it on Amy's head with a smile. The white, yellow, and pink flowers were in full bloom, and they appeared even more beautiful in the light of the green leaves. "Thank you, Big Sister 1111 and Big Bear." "Welcome," Amy said happily. She reached out to touch the flower wreath, and her smile became even more vibrant. Lulu was standing behind them with a bashful smile on her face. There were 2 bird cages in her hands, and Green Pea spread its wings elegantly in the cage on the left. It bowed toward Amy, and said in a crisp voice, "Thank you, Amy." "Thank you, Your Highness Amy, but can I really only stay in this pitch-black cage for this party? This is torture for me both mentally and physically." The cage on the right was covered with a piece of black cloth. Charcoal's voice came from the cage with a hint of sincerity. "That won't do. There are a lot of little kids coming today. Charcoal, be good and stay in the cage. If you lift the black cloth or come out on your own, I'll freeze you and send you home." Amy shook her head without any intention of negotiating. "All right, I definitely won't come out on my own," Black Coal grumbled before falling silent. "Wow, Amy, is this your family's restaurant? It's so beautiful." Right at this moment, an astonished voice sounded from behind Lulu. Lulu stood to the side, revealing Jessica and Rebecca, who had just arrived. Jessica had changed into the yellow dress that Amy had given her, and a yellow butterfly hair clip was clipped to her ears. Her bright black eyes were filled with surprise as she stared at the bright floor-to-ceiling glass. One of her little hands was clasped behind her back, and no one knew what she was hiding. Rebecca was standing beside Jessica. She was wearing a grayish-green floral dress, and there were many creases on the dress, as if it had just been found in a box. Her hair was tied up in a simple bun, and she appeared to be quite gentle. She stood beside Jessica with a smile on her face. "That's right, this is my family's restaurant. Jessica, you look so beautiful in this dress." Amy's eyes lit up at the sight of Jessica, and she quickly stepped forward to grab Jessica's hand with a smile as she said, "You're as beautiful as a butterfly." "That's right, what an adorable little girl. Jessica, what a beautiful name." 1111 was also looking at Jessica with a smile on her face, and she reached out to stroke her hair. "Thank you." Jessica was a little shy. She then looked at Amy with a serious expression, and said, "Amy, give me your hand. I have a present for you." "All right." Amy extended her left hand as she looked at Jessica with anticipation in her eyes. Jessica placed her little hand on Amy's hand in a solemn manner before slowly removing her hand. A purple crystal that was about the size of a little finger appeared on Amy's hand. The surface of the crystal was a little irregular, but it was clean and clear without any impurities. When the sun shone on it, it reflected a dazzling purple light, and projected a beautiful purple ribbon onto Amy's hand. "Wow, what a beautiful purple gemstone." Amy's eyes lit up. She loved purple things, but she quickly placed the purple crystal back into Jessica's hand. She shook her head as she said, "No, Jessica, I can't accept such a precious gift." Chapter 407. Remi looked at Jessica's clear eyes, then looked at the purple crystal in her hand. She slowly clenched her fist, nodded her head, and said with a smile, "I'll keep it well, just like our friendship." I'll always keep it. Okay. A joyful smile appeared on Jessica's face, and she also nodded with a similar expression. Scott, Jessica received a precious friendship with that purple stone you gave her. Did you see it? Rebecca looked at the two young girls holding hands with a smile, and turned away to wipe the tears from her eyes. I'm not late, am I? A gentle voice sounded, and Luna made her way over with a smile on her face. You're not late, Teacher Luna. Everyone's here, so the party can begin now, Amy said to Luna with an elated expression. Teacher Luna, you're here too. Jessica also looked at Luna with an elated expression. Yeah, Amy and Jessica are both so beautiful today. Luna looked at the two of them with a smile, and two bright red flowers appeared in her hand as if she were performing magic. She then pinned them onto Amy and Jessica's hair, and said, I didn't prepare any presents, so I'll give each of you a little red flower. Teacher Luna, I'm Jessica's mother. Thank you for taking care of Jessica and me. Rebecca stepped forward and bowed to Luna with gratitude in her eyes. You're too kind. Jessica is very adorable and obedient. I heard that you've been in poor health recently. Are you feeling better now? Luna asked with concern as she helped Jessica to her feet. It's all thanks to Mr. Meg's help that I'm almost fully recovered. I can continue to work, and Jessica doesn't have to go to the streets anymore. Rebecca nodded in response. Mr. Meg is such a kind person. Luna smiled. She didn't know when Meg had helped Jessica's mother, but it was great news that Jessica didn't have to beg on the streets every day. She was such a beautiful and adorable little girl. Teacher Luna. Everyone walked in, and Daphne and Ignatsu greeted Luna with elation in their eyes. Hello, Teacher Luna. Parba looked at Luna with a hint of surprise, and an awkward expression appeared on his face, but he still mustered up his courage and greeted her. Hello, Daphne, Ignatsu, Parba. So you're all here. Amy has invited all her good friends. Luna greeted the parents before taking a seat with 1111 and Lulu and the others. Look, this is a talking bird. The two bird cages were placed on a table by the side, and REMI waved to the children. A bird. Is that for real? My neighbor's parrot can talk too, but it can only imitate my neighbor's words. It can't communicate with people. Ignatsu was the first to come forward, and asked curiously. I've never seen a talking bird before. And this bird is so beautiful. Its feathers seem to be glowing. Daphne looked at Green Bean with anticipation in her eyes. Little bird. Little bird. Parba clapped his little hands with elation. He grabbed onto a chair and tried to climb onto it. Unfortunately, his limbs were too short, so he couldn't find a way to climb onto it. How can a bird talk? That's a lie, Parma said disdainfully as he glanced at them. This is Green Bean, and this is Black Coal. Black Coal is too ashamed to face anyone, so it's hiding, but you can hear its voice. Amy didn't explain anything after hearing Parma's words. Instead, she introduced Green Bean and Black Coal to everyone. I'm not hiding because I'm too ashamed to face anyone. Also, my name is not Charcoal. You can call me the Honorable Foma Odin Ben. Charcoal's voice came from the birdcage wrapped in black cloth, with a hint of annoyance. I'm Sunny. They usually call me Green Bean, but I prefer the name Sunny. Green Bean spread open its wings and spoke in an elegant voice. Wow, it's really good at talking. And it's talking to us. It didn't just learn a few words. Ignatsu yelled with elation. What a beautiful voice. I also want to raise a cute talking bird. Daphne turned around to look at Guy. This is the first time I've seen a talking bird. If I see one in the future, I'll definitely catch it for you. Guy was a little exasperated. The chances of encountering a talking bird were very, very slim. Bird. Hug. Parba opened his little hands and tried to grab the birdcage on the table, but the table was so much taller than him that he couldn't reach it even if he stood on his tiptoes. It really is a talking bird. It's so cute. It's even cuter than our Dai. Miranda's eyes lit up, and she patted Parma's head with a smile as she said, Parma, you can't deny things you haven't seen in the future. Otherwise, you'll only make yourself seem shallow. That's not a quality that a man should have. You have to be humble and courteous in order to become a real man. I understand, Mother. Palmer looked at Miranda and lowered his head with a hint of guilt in his eyes. However, he quickly raised his head again and looked into Miranda's eyes with a serious expression as he said, "I'm going to become a real man and become a role model for my little brothers. I also believe in you." Miranda nodded with a smile and an encouraging look in her eyes. George merely looked on with a smile, and the little guy in his arms reached out toward the chandelier. Even though he didn't catch anything, a joyful smile still appeared on his face. Meg made his way out of the kitchen with a smile, and said, "Come here, everyone. It's an honor to have invited all of you to a party, and I hope you'll all have a great time today. Even though this is a party, we're in a restaurant, so we'll order whatever you like. Aside from the tofu pudding, there's no limit on anything you want to eat today." After everyone had taken their seats, Meg continued, and Yarbemia placed a menu in front of everyone. Miranda flipped open the menu and took a quick glance at it before asking, "Wow, there are so many dishes. Are these all new dishes that were released today?" "Probably. Perhaps. Perhaps." George replied with an awkward look on his face. He didn't think that Meg would be so straightforward as to give the guests a free menu. Chapter 408. Miranda, well. George was a little anxious as he looked at the expectant Miranda. He was trying to think of a way to convince her not to eat the ruggiamo and spicy grilled fish. If she were to eat those two dishes, her baby would most likely jump out of her womb in a fit of loneliness. "My apologies, madam, but ruggiamo and spicy grilled fish are most likely not suitable for you as they're too stimulating for your baby. However, you can try the tofu pudding, as well as the braised chicken and rice and Yangju fried rice." Meg shook his head with a smile. "That's right, Miranda, you should wait until you give birth to your baby. When that time comes, you can eat as much as you want." "Is that so?" A hint of disappointment appeared on Miranda's face, but she quickly nodded and said, "All right, then I'll have a sweet tofu pudding and a savory tofu pudding," George hurriedly said as he turned to Meg with a grateful expression. "My apologies, madam, but you can only have one tofu pudding per meal. It's quite nutritious, so it may be difficult to digest if you eat too much, so it's best to only have one tofu pudding per meal." Meg shrugged in response. He wasn't trying to scam her. Normal people would only eat one portion of tofu pudding per day, but pregnant women had to be even more cautious. "Then I'll have a sweet tofu pudding, a Yangju fried rice, and a braised chicken and rice." Miranda was a little disappointed, but she didn't appear to be displeased in the slightest as she smiled. "All right." Meg nodded. "There's so much delicious food, can I really order anything?" Jessica's mouth was wide open with anticipation as she listened to Emi's introduction of various delicacies. Amy nodded as she whispered into Jessica's ear, "Of course you can. Father said that everyone can order anything they want, and all of them are super delicious. However, there's going to be a super delicious new dish today, so you have to save some food for the final dish." Jessica's eyes lit up as she nodded, and said, "All right, then I'll eat the same thing as Amy. That way, I won't eat too much." "Jessica, you have to eat less." Rebecca looked at the prices on the menu and her eyes widened. She hurriedly whispered to Jessica. Even the cheapest dish on the menu cost 200 copper coins, while the most expensive dish, the spicy grilled fish, cost 2,000 copper coins. Such prices were simply unimaginable to her. It's fine. She can eat whatever she wants. Today is a party. The prices on the menu don't count, Meg said to Rebecca with a smile. Thank you. Rebecca looked at Meg's gentle expression and Jessica's expectant expression. She hesitated for a moment before nodding gratefully at Meg. I want a spicy grilled fish. I love fish, and Amy's fish are all super big, so it'll definitely be super delicious, Daphne said expectantly. Meg noted down every customer's order and turned to enter the kitchen. Honey, is it because you're worried about the baby that you only bring me braised chicken and rice and Yangju fried rice? Miranda asked with a smile. I actually really want to share these delicacies with you, Miranda, but Mr. Max said that you shouldn't eat them while you're pregnant, so I didn't dare to bring them for you. I was afraid that you'd want to eat them, so I didn't tell you. I lied to you about that, and I'm sorry. George looked at Miranda with a serious expression. How could I blame you, silly? For the sake of our baby, I'll control my mouth no matter how much I want to eat. Miranda stroked Gyurge's cheek with a serious smile. Yarbemia brought out a series of tofu puddings, both sweet and savory, and placed them in front of everyone. Yep. This sweet tofu pudding is so delicious. It melts in my mouth, and it's sweet but not greasy. It's so tasteless. Honey, why didn't you tell me that Mr. Mac has such delicious food here? Miranda took a bite of the tofu pudding, and an elated expression appeared on her face as she looked at Gyurge with a displeased expression. Mr. Mac said that tofu pudding can't be taken out. Gyurge broke into a cold sweat. Didn't she just say that she wouldn't blame him? Then you could have brought me here to eat. Miranda harumphed as she scooped another spoonful of tofu pudding into her mouth. It was so delicious that she couldn't stop eating, so she didn't have time to pay attention to Gyurge. It's as white as snow after I cut it open, and it's so soft and bouncy. It's so amazing. Jessica scooped up a spoonful of savory tofu pudding before slowly putting it into her mouth. Her eyes immediately lit up, and she swallowed the tofu pudding in no time. This is so delicious. Amy, your father is so awesome. Jessica looked at Amy with elation. The tofu pudding was soft and sweet, and she had never tasted anything like it before. Rebecca also took a bite of the tofu pudding, and an incredulous look also appeared on her face. She was a little reluctant to part with the food, which cost 200 copper coins per serving, but she didn't dare to imagine how delicious it would be. Aside from the braised chicken and rice, this was the best thing she had ever tasted. Everyone was immersed in the delicious tofu pudding, while Yarbemia continued to bring out the next dishes. There was braised chicken and rice, Yongju fried rice, Rugiamo, and so on. MIA, go take a seat, and I'll take care of everything else. Enjoy the rest of the meal, Meg said with a smile as he accepted the grilled fish from Yarbemia. Thank you, boss. Yarbemia nodded with a smile before taking a seat and munching on the tofu pudding. Meg placed the grilled fish in front of Daphne with a smile, and said, Daphne, here's your medium spicy grilled fish. It's a little hot right after it came out of the pot, so be careful. The spicy aroma mixed with the rich aroma of the fish wafted through the air. The grilled fish that had just been taken out of the pot was steaming under the alcohol stove, making sizzling sounds. The fish was covered in a thin layer of chili and red sauce, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. It smells so good. I really want to eat it. Miranda immediately sat up straight, and swallowed her saliva as she looked at the grilled fish in front of her. Right at this moment, her bulging stomach also squirmed a little, as if there was a little thing that was in a hurry to break out of its shell. My dear, can we have one, too? I only want to eat a little bit. Look, even our little cutie is getting a little impatient. I'm sure she'll want to eat such delicious food as well, Miranda said with a pitiable expression. Miranda, you can't do that. The spicy grilled fish is really spicy and numbing, your stomach won't be able to handle it. Gyurge shook his head with a firm expression. Chapter 409. Meg had cooked a total of 3 grilled fish, 2 of which were large portions, and 1 of which was medium portions. Aside from Miranda, everyone else was able to enjoy the grilled fish. Gyurge looked at the grilled fish, and swallowed his saliva as he said to Miranda, Don't worry, I'll accompany you. Braised chicken is also very delicious. Due to her pregnancy, Miranda's emotions sometimes fluctuated very quickly. After having given birth to her first 3 children, Gyurge was already very familiar with all of this, and he wasn't impatient or annoyed in the slightest. Miranda nodded with a serious expression, and said, Then you have to bring me here to eat a lot of fish after I give birth. All right, you can eat as much as you want after the baby is born. I'll come here with you every day. A gentle smile appeared on Gyurge's face as he held Angus in one arm and stroked Miranda's stomach with the other as he said, Be good, little baby. After you're born, I'll bring you and your mother here to eat as much fish as you want. As if it had understood Gyurge's promise, the naughty little thing in Miranda's stomach quickly calmed down, and Gyurge heaved a sigh of relief. This spicy grilled fish is so delicious. It's so numb and spicy, and I feel like my throat is on fire. Vivian loves to eat things with strong flavors, so she'll definitely love this dish. Luna gently fanned herself with her hand, and stuck out her little tongue in an adorable manner. She was thinking about when she could sneak Vivian out for a meal of spicy grilled fish. Mr. Meg's cooking skills are amazing. You can't eat such delicious food anywhere else. Amy's father is so awesome. I'm so envious of Amy for being able to eat such delicious food every day. It can't get any better. The praise of the adults and children was incessant, and a proud and elated smile appeared on Amy's little face. You're far too kind. Meg was in a very good mood after being praised. The sense of accomplishment that he was able to bring joy and enjoyment to his customers was indescribable. The delicious food weakened everyone's desire to chat and joke. Only when all the food on the table was finished did everyone burp in satisfaction. Burp. Jessica burped. She looked at Amy, who had picked up the last Ruggiamo on the table, and said in surprise, "Amy, how can your stomach hold so much food? I'm already full, but you can still eat so much." "Because my stomach is bigger than Jessica's," Amy said with a smile. She held the Ruggiamo in her hands and bit into it. Soon, the Ruggiamo was in her stomach. "It looks like everyone's almost done eating. For this gathering, Amy, MIA, and Aisha have prepared a dance for everyone. Take a break and enjoy their dance. Spring is coming. After watching the dance, there will be a dessert after the meal. It's also a new product of the restaurant. Please try it." Meg looked at the crowd and said with a smile. He was also looking forward to the debut of the Elysium restaurant. "Wow, really? Amy, you can dance? That's amazing." Daphne looked at Amy with bright eyes. "Can you really dance?" Ignatsu was a little skeptical. "REMI is a fast learner. When teacher Luna taught us how to sing, she learned it immediately." Jessica was full of confidence. "Spring is coming. What kind of dance will it be? Was it Mr. Meg who taught Amy? Like the song The Little Girl Who Picked Mushrooms?" Luna also looked at Amy curiously, and then her eyes fell on Meg. The catchy song The Little Girl Who Picked Mushrooms had left a deep impression on her. "I've been learning it for a long time, but I still feel that I can't dance very well. But I want to show you today." Amy's little face was a little nervous, but it quickly turned into anticipation. She said happily, "Also, we can eat Father's new dessert after the dance. It must be super delicious." "I think so. I've already fallen in love with your father's food. I love all of it." Ignatsu nodded seriously, and the little bean sprout on his head swayed from side to side. He seemed to be in a good mood. "I'm also curious about Mr. Mac's new dish. Will it be as good as sweet tofu pudding?" 1111 thought to herself with anticipation. After a short break, Amy, Yarbemia, and Sally stood up and walked to the center of the empty space. Amy stood in the middle, Yarbemia stood on the left, and Sally stood on the right. The three of them faced three directions, and stood in the classic Gokuraku Jodo dance pose with their hands raised in preparation. The half-elf Loli in the purple dress, the half-dragon in the black-maid costume, and the elf in the gold-threaded cheongsam, cute, energetic, and elegant. The three completely different images stood together, but it didn't feel out of place at all. "I'm so nervous to dance in front of so many people." Yarbemia slowly adjusted her breathing, but she could still hear her heart thumping violently. Before coming to Mammis, she was only a female worker in the dark kitchen, responsible for washing dishes and preparing ingredients. She was despised by her colleagues and ridiculed by her boss. She was afraid of facing many people, and even communicating with strangers. She didn't dare to believe that she would one day learn how to dance, and that she would be able to dance in front of so many people. However, all of this came true after coming to Mammis. She learned how to face all of the customers with a sincere smile, and learned what it meant to be confident and respected. "Big sister MIA, you can do it," Amy said encouragingly as she grabbed Yarbemia's hand. "MIA is already dancing very well. She's even better than me. Don't be nervous. Just do what you usually do," Sally encouraged with a smile. "Okay." Yarbemia felt that she was suddenly filled with energy, and most of her nervousness disappeared. She nodded seriously. "Let's start," Meg said with a smile as he pressed the play button on the music box. The lively music of Gokuraku Jodo sounded, and the three of them danced to the music. Their skirts and sleeves fluttered in the wind, and each of their movements was light yet powerful. Their elegant hand movements were like butterflies fluttering on the floor, and their toes tapped lightly on the ground to the beat of the drums. The three of them danced in 3 different styles, yet they were perfectly combined. Their movements were flawless, and their movements were sometimes fast and sometimes slow. It was impossible to take one's eyes off of them. So amazing. Ignatsu's mouth gaped open in disbelief. What rhythmic music! What a unique and beautiful dance! Luna was also stunned. Chapter 410. What a brilliant performance! This is the best Gokuraku Jodo I have ever seen. Mag looked at the 3 of them who were stepping to the beat with precision. Their movements were gentle and powerful, and his eyes were also filled with amazement. Even though he had watched them learn this dance bit by bit, this was the first time that he had seen them dance so seriously. They were indeed very good, and even Yabemia, who was quite stiff at the beginning, had found her own rhythm. What interesting music! What kind of instrument is producing such a sound? There seems to be a drum and a zither, and this dance is also very interesting and beautiful. The lively music made 1111's legs shake along with it. She stared at the 3 of them with a curious look on her face. I didn't think that she would be so good at dancing. Palmer's eyes also widened with incredulity as he looked at Amy. This was the first time that he had seen a little girl of his age dance, and she was dancing so well. It was a little difficult for him to reconcile her with the little girl in dirty clothes from back then. What a wonderful music and dance! Her voice is so beautiful, I want to learn it. What a beautiful dance! My dear, was my waist as thin as theirs? I could also dance so beautifully. Miranda rested her chin on her hands as she looked at Yabemia and Sally with nostalgia in her eyes. That's right. We fell in love at first sight during the peace ceremony in Chaos City. At the time, you were the best lead dancer in the dance troupe, and you were the most dazzling presence on the stage. I fell in love with you at first sight. Gyurge nodded with a smile, and a hint of nostalgia appeared in his eyes as he looked at Miranda. That's right. You were tall and handsome at the time. Even though you were standing below the stage, I still saw you right away. It was as if there was a voice in my head that was saying, it's him, it's him. And then I fell into your trap. Miranda looked at Gyurge and pinched his cheek as she sighed with emotion. Time really is like a handful of pig feed. Phut. Meg, who was sitting at the side, almost burst out laughing. He had thought that it was a bunch of dog food, but when it reached his mouth, he suddenly couldn't eat it. Ahem. Mr. Mac, even though I look like this now, I was actually quite handsome when I was younger. I was known as one of the 4 young masters of Aiden, Gyurge explained to Meg with an awkward expression. Don't tell me Harrison is one of them. Meg raised an eyebrow and asked doubtfully. Hey, does Mr. Mac know about the 4 young masters of Aiden? Gyurge looked at Meg with a surprised expression. No, this is the first time I've heard of it. Mag shook his head, and he really wanted to burst into laughter. It appeared that the 4 young masters of Aiden weren't ranked according to their looks. It was very likely that they had given themselves that title. The remaining 2 young masters were most likely still part of the Fat Legion. Does it look good? 1111 suddenly turned to look at Lulu and asked. Yes, it does. Lulu nodded with a bashful smile. Lulu, you've changed. 1111 pouted and looked at Lulu with a sad expression. 1111, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Lulu looked at 1111 with a perplexed expression. She didn't know what she had done wrong again. You used to say that I was the prettiest, but now you have other women in your eyes. You've changed. I'm no longer the only one for you. 1111 sighed. She looked like a woman who had been abandoned by a heartless man. Silly, how could that be? There's never a lack of beautiful things in this world, but in my heart, you'll always be the prettiest. That's the difference between you and them. Lulu reached out and gently caressed 1111's hair as she looked at her with a gentle gaze. Hey, Lulu, why are you so sweet? You're so annoying. 1111 clenched her little fists and gently punched Lulu's chest. She looked at Amy and whispered, Lulu, let's have a baby as adorable as little Amy. No, we should have a bunch of adorable little babies. All right, You can have as many as you want. Lulu nodded with a smile as she wrapped an arm around 1111's shoulder. The brisk music came to the middle and end of the song. Remi slowly bent down, blinked her big blue eyes, and hooked her little finger with a hook. Oh no, my heart is about to jump out of my chest. Amy is breaking the rules. Daphne, who was sitting directly across from Amy, had a hand over her heart as she looked at Amy with a blush on her face. Ma, this big sister is flirting with me. Parba, who was licking the bottom of a small bowl, faltered slightly before yelling at Miranda. Everyone burst into laughter. She is indeed a little flirtatious. Mag was facing Yabemia. Although her blushing face was still a little nervous, her different-colored eyes had a different kind of allure to them. The music slowly came to a stop, and the three of them also stopped moving. They were facing 3 different directions, and all of them were in an elegant pose. That was such a beautiful dance. That was such a beautiful dance. Amy, can you teach me how to dance as well? All 3 of them are so awesome. Applause rang out along with everyone's praises. Everyone had elated smiles on their faces after witnessing such a delightful dance. The rhythmic beat also gave them a completely different musical experience. Thank you, everyone. Amy nodded at everyone with a joyful smile on her face. She was actually a little nervous to dance in front of so many people for the first time, but she could sense that Big Sister Mia was even more nervous, so she tried her best not to show it. We did it. Yabemia nodded, but her mind was a little muddled, as if all of the blood in her body had rushed to her brain. She was struck by a sense of surrealism as she listened to everyone's applause and praises. Sally was the calmest of all, but she also had an elated smile on her face. This was the first time she had danced in front of so many non-human beings, and it was a very special feeling. That was a great dance. Sit down and rest for a while. As a reward, I'll be bringing out the restaurant's upcoming new product, ice cream, Meg announced with a smile. Ice cream? What's that, Father? Is it something cold? Amy's eyes lit up as she looked at Meg with curiosity in her eyes. Everyone also turned their attention to Meg. They had tasted so many different delicacies, and each and every one of them was a unique experience, so they were all looking forward to the new product that Meg was talking about. Chapter 4:11. Mr. Mac, what's vanilla? What's matcha? And what's chocolate? 1111 turned to Meg with a perplexed expression. She only knew that blueberry was a small blue fruit, but she didn't know what the other 3 flavors were. Is vanilla a very fragrant grass? But can grass be eaten? Daphne asked with a curious expression. That's right. Vanilla is a type of grass with a special fragrance, but it can't be eaten directly. Instead, it's ground into powder and used as an ingredient. Matcha isn't a normal tea leaf. Instead, it's a type of green tea that has been ground into powder to create an ingredient with a refreshing and delicious aroma. Chocolate is a rich and fragrant food. Blueberry is a type of sweet and sour fruit. Each of the 4 flavors has its own unique characteristics, so you can choose whichever flavor you like. Of course, you can also try different flavors, Meg explained with a smile. Tofu pudding has 2 flavors, sweet and savory, and everyone is already fighting over it. Now that this new product has released 4 flavors, are we going to have to line up 4 times in the future? Gyurge murmured with a concerned expression. He thought about it for a moment before raising his hand. I want a chocolate one. I want a sour one, so I'll have a blueberry ice cream, Miranda said after some thought. I want a matcha one. Palmer raised his hand. Even though his expression was calm, his eyes were filled with anticipation. I want a fragrant one. I want a fragrant one. Sweet. Sweet. Angus reached out with his little hand and yelled with elation. He had just eaten half a bowl of tofu pudding, and he was extremely happy. No, Angus can't eat anything cold yet. Miranda shook her head as she held onto Angus' little hand. War. Angus immediately began to cry upon hearing this. Wow, can I have one of each flavor? Amy turned to Meg with anticipation in her eyes. Of course, Amy, you can have as many as you want. Meg nodded with a smile. For a foodie, choice really wasn't an issue. If they could just have one of each flavor, then it wouldn't be an issue. Ice cream. Mr. Meg's name is so interesting and special. This must be another one of his original desserts. What a talented chef, Luna thought to herself as she watched Meg's back in the kitchen. Everyone sat down and looked in the direction of the kitchen expectantly. They wondered what kind of dessert Meg would make. Meg came out with a tray full of small holes. There were ice creams of various colors on the tray. Light yellow vanilla ice cream, light green matcha ice cream, bluish purple blueberry ice cream, and black and white chocolate ice cream. Cold air rose up, and the ice creams were like a series of flowers blooming in the mist, drawing everyone's attention. Mr. Palmer's matcha ice cream, Mrs. Miranda's blueberry ice cream, and Lulu's chocolate ice cream. This is the restaurant's new product, ice cream. Please enjoy, it'll taste even better if you lick it. Meg handed out the ice creams to everyone with a smile on his face. Amy was holding a bluish-purple blueberry ice cream. Is this made from ice? It looks solid. Will I be able to chew on it? Gyurge looked at the ice cream in his hand with a skeptical expression. It looks really delicious. Miranda looked at the ice cream in her hand with an expectant look on her face. It really is icy cold, and it's purple. It's so beautiful. Amy's eyes lit up as she looked at the blueberry ice cream in her hand. The two bluish-purple snowballs were stacked on top of each other on a cone-shaped cream eggshell. There was a section of the eggshell that was made from paper, and it was exuding a faint blueberry aroma. Do you want to lick it? Amy held the ice cream in front of her with both hands before licking it with her little pink tongue. The sweet and sour flavor of blueberries intertwined with the flavor of milk on the tip of her tongue, creating a combination of sweetness and sourness. The smooth and refreshing texture made Amy feel as if she had been plunged into a world of purple snow. She licked the purple snowflakes floating in the sky, and it was sweet and sour with a rich milk aroma. It's sweet and sour, it's so delicious. I love blueberry ice cream. Amy licked another mouthful of ice cream with elation on her face. Is this the so-called matcha ice cream? Tea leaves are used for brewing. No one would eat them directly. Mr. Meg said that the tea leaves were ground into powder before being added into the ice cream. Wouldn't it carry the bitter flavor of the tea leaves? Would it really be delicious? Luna looked at the green matcha ice cream in her hand with a contemplative look in her eyes. Her grandfather was very fond of tea. This type of green tea originated from Vic Mountain, and was very popular among the nobles in Rodu as it had the effects of refreshing the mind and aiding digestion. However, there wasn't a lot of authentic Vic Mountain tea produced each year, and the price was quite high. Every spring, all of the tea leaves would be sold out as soon as they were harvested. Her grandfather's students knew that he loved tea, so they would bring him a kilogram or two of tea leaves every year. There were also tea leaves planted in other places, but the quality of the tea leaves here paled in comparison to those from Vic Mountain. Luna had often been by her grandfather's side, so she was quite proficient at brewing tea. As such, she had some understanding of tea leaves, and knew how to differentiate between good tea leaves and ordinary tea leaves. Luna brought the matcha ice cream to her nose and took a gentle sniff. The refreshing aroma of green tea mixed with a hint of milk immediately wafted into her nose, and she couldn't help but close her eyes. The refreshing aroma of the tea was imbued with the scent of spring rain, and she felt as if she had been swept into a tea garden filled with green tea leaves. The green tea leaves gently swayed in the spring breeze, and the faint aroma of the tea wafted toward her. She felt as if her entire body had been cleansed after taking a deep breath. What kind of tea leaves are these? Why is there such a rich tea aroma? The aroma of this tea far exceeds even that of the best spring tea from Vic Mountain, and this is only after it's been ground into powder. Luna opened her eyes with an incredulous look on her face as she stared at the ice cream before her. The spring tea from Vic Mountain was widely acknowledged as the best spring tea on the Norland continent, but the aroma emanating from this ice cream was challenging Luna's perception. She hesitated momentarily before licking the ball of ice cream on top of her tongue. The ball of ice cream stopped on the tip of her tongue, and slowly melted. The sweet milk aroma flowed down her throat along with the faint aroma of the tea. The pleasant sensation began to spread from the tip of her tongue, and slowly flowed down her throat. Chapter 4:12. Phew, Luna tried her best to prevent herself from making any strange noises as the refreshing cold soothed the scorching heat and greasiness from the spicy grilled fish. She slowly opened her eyes and exhaled gently. The refreshing aroma of green tea lingered in her mouth, and Luna felt as if her entire body had been rejuvenated. This is far superior to the top-grade green tea from Vic Mountain. Even the tea leaves from that 1,000-year-old tea tree that Grandpa is only willing to put in 2 or 3 leaves at a time are far superior to the green tea in this ice cream. What kind of top-grade green tea is this? Just a single lick of this is enough to make me feel so energized and refreshed. Even my stomach is beginning to feel lighter and more comfortable. Luna stared at the ice cream in her hand with incredulity on her face. She was an expert in tea, so she was well aware of what such top-grade tea leaves entailed. If a cup of green tea of this quality were to be sold in Rodu, it could fetch hundreds of thousands of copper coins. If there were a few tea aficionados at an auction, the price could be even higher. After all, the tea leaves from the 1,000-year-old tea tree at Vic Mountain were sold for 100,000 copper coins, and the quality of this cup of green tea was clearly superior to that of the tea tree. However, Meg was using such top-grade green tea to make ice cream. If her grandfather were to find out about this, he would most likely be hopping mad. However, this taste is really delicious. It's sweet but not greasy, and it's refreshing and delectable. This flavor is so intoxicating, and the feeling of licking it is so wonderful. Luna licked the corner of her lips with the tip of her tongue before licking the ice cream. She was completely intoxicated by the flavor. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. This feeling is so blissful. Ignatsu had already licked most of the chocolate ice cream in his hand, and a blissful expression appeared on his chubby face. He loved sweet food the most, and this chocolate ice cream was the most delicious dessert he had ever tasted in his life. With a light lick, the rich and smooth chocolate and the alluring aroma of milk fused together in his mouth. The texture was rich and mellow, and he felt as if he had been thrown into a jar of honey. The sweetness completely drowned him, and this feeling was simply too blissful. Delicious. Delicious. Sweet. Paba stood on the ground and licked the ice cream with both hands. Due to the fact that his hands were a little unstable, some of the ice cream ended up on his nose and face. He swayed as he ate, and before he knew it, he had arrived at the table where the 2 bird cages were placed. There was an empty plate in front of Green Bean's birdcage, and it was combing its feathers with its head lowered, showing no interest in the ice cream. "Little fellow, is the ice cream tasty?" A low voice suddenly came from the cage covered with a black cloth. "It's delicious." Paba nodded vigorously before licking the ice cream with a joyful expression on his little face. "I actually have something that's even more delicious than ice cream. Do you want it?" The low voice sounded again, and it was very tempting. "Better than ice cream?" Paba looked at the ice cream in his hand, and then at the birdcage covered by the black cloth with a hesitant expression. "That's right, it's in the cage right in front of you. If you climb up and remove this black cloth, I'll give it to you. It's something that's even more delicious than ice cream," the voice continued to tempt him. "Yay, yay." Paba immediately nodded with elation. He looked around, and began to climb onto the chair next to him. This time, he found a bar that he could step on, and he climbed onto the chair with all his might. He held the vanilla ice cream in one hand, and the black cloth covering the birdcage in the other. "Paba, what are you doing?" Miranda was the first to notice Paba standing on the chair, and she was a little confused. Everyone was immersed in the delicious ice cream, and they also turned to look at Paba with confusion. They didn't know when he had climbed onto the chair, and they didn't know what he was trying to do. Amy looked at Paba with a serious expression, and said, "You better not remove that black cloth. Otherwise, you might." However, before she had a chance to finish her sentence, Paba had already pulled down a corner of the black cloth. The black cloth fell to reveal a metal cage, as well as a featherless black crow in the cage. Paba's expression and movements immediately stiffened. "Hello, my little cutie," Black Coal greeted in a warm manner. "What?" Paba immediately burst into tears. He took a few steps back, and the ice cream in his hand shook. The snowball on top flew out, and was about to land on the ground. "Wasting food is shameful." Black Coal stuck his head out of the cage, and opened his mouth to catch the snowball. The snowball was about the size of a baby's fist, and due to the force of the fall, it rolled down his throat and got stuck in his neck. It looked as if he had grown a large Adam's apple. It's so ugly. Amy looked at the bawling Parba and shrugged with a resigned expression. Wow, that bird is so ugly, Daphne exclaimed as she covered her eyes with her hands and only dared to peek through the gaps between her fingers. Yeah, where's its feather? And its neck is so big. Jessica nodded in agreement. Am I the only one who thinks that it looks a little cute like this? Ignatsu asked with a perplexed expression. He licked his ice cream as he cackled like a pig. Coo! Coo coo! Black Coal jumped up and down in the cage as if he wanted to comfort the bawling Parba. However, there was a snowball stuck in his throat, and he couldn't utter a complete sound, making him appear rather comical. Miranda slowly made her way over to a chair and looked at Parba with a serious expression as she said, "All right, it's all right now. Don't cry. A man can't cry for no reason. But, this bird is so ugly." Parba pursed his lips as he tried to stop himself from crying. He pointed at Black Coal in the cage with an aggrieved expression. Coo! Coo coo! Black Coal stuck his head out of the cage and seemed to have something to say. Parba, it's not right for you to say that. Miranda shook her head at Parba. Black Coal nodded with a smug expression as he looked at Parba. Look, even though it's ugly, at least it knows that it's too ashamed to face anyone, so it hid behind the black cloth. You were the one who removed the black cloth, so you can't blame it for being scared, Miranda continued. Slap. Chapter 413. Host, a serious reminder from the system. Even though all of the ingredients provided by the system come from nature and are non-toxic, it's not advisable to eat too much ice cream at once. Otherwise, it could cause a heavy burden on the stomach. Please limit the amount of ice cream consumed to avoid unnecessary accidents. The system's voice sounded with a hint of seriousness. I see. I almost forgot that eating too much ice cream is indeed not a good thing. It's easy to get diarrhea. Meg came to a sudden realization. He had forgotten everything after being coaxed by Amy, and he agreed to everything she said. It looked like he still couldn't allow her to eat as much as she wanted. System, how many ice creams are within the tolerance range of a normal person? Meg asked internally. Limiting the amount of ice cream he could buy was naturally the simplest method. 3 for normal humans and 2 for children, the system replied. All right, then I'll limit it to 2. Meg nodded without any hesitation. He licked the mocha ice cream in his hand, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. Such a delicious ice cream was completely worth the effort he had put into concocting it in the test field for the god of cookery. Paired with the best ingredients, the exquisite texture was far superior to all of the high-grade ice creams he had tasted in his past life. It could be said that it was on a completely different level. Even he felt like he could eat 10 more, let alone a child. Father, I want to eat more ice cream. I want to eat green ice cream this time, one that's the color of grass. Amy turned to Meg as she spoke. She had already finished her 2 snowballs, and she opened her mouth to take a bite of the eggshell, upon which a crunching sound rang out. It was extremely delicious and fragrant. All right, but Amy, you can only eat 3 ice creams at most for lunch. Father was wrong. Ice creams are too cold, so eating too much of them can cause stomach discomfort, Meg said with a smile. Amy faltered momentarily before turning to Mag with a pitiable expression, and asked, So I have an ice cream that I can't have for lunch today? That's right, but that's all right. You can have the last one at night. Meg nodded. At the sight of Amy's pitiful expression, he wanted nothing more than to immediately grab a large handful of ice creams and shove them into her arms. They're all yours. You can have them all. All right, then. I don't want the fragrant ice cream. I want the chocolate one. I'll eat the last one since it's the sweetest. Amy nodded obediently. Okay. Meg nodded with a smile. Mr. Mac, I think you were born for food. You will definitely be recorded in the history of the Nora continent. The food you invent will change the world. 1111 looked at Mag and praised from the bottom of her heart, We've been to many places in the past, but we've never tasted such delicious food, such a refreshing cooking method, and such a novel idea. You're a genius. You flatter me. I was just lucky. Meg smiled. He wasn't very interested in changing the world. His current goal was to improve his power as quickly as possible so that he could cook all kinds of delicious food for Amy. If possible, he wanted to find Amy's mother so that Amy could live a life with her mother by her side. The ice cream served as the dessert after the meal, and it elevated the atmosphere of this gathering to the extreme. The cold and smooth ice cream brought an incomparable experience to everyone, and it brought with it a powerful and delicious impact, elevating everyone's sense of happiness and satisfaction to the extreme. Burp. I'm so full. I'm so happy. Ignatsu burped as he stroked his round little tummy with a blissful expression on his chubby face. This is the most delicious meal I've ever had. Thank you, Amy. Jessica licked the ice cream off the corner of her lips with a smile as she looked at Amy. You're welcome, Jessica. Come and play with me often in the future. That way, I'll be able to invite you to stay for dinner, Amy whispered into Jessica's ear with a smile. No, I can't. My mother said that only good children can eat at home. Jessica shook her head with a smile as she said, but I'll still come and play with you. Luna turned to Rebecca with a smile, and said, Mother Jessica should be old enough to go to school, right? If you need me, I can help her apply for admission to Chaos School. For a child of her age, studying in a school is better than anywhere else. Thank you, Teacher Luna. Yes, it's about time for her to go to school. Her father told me that I had to send her to Chaos School in the future so that she could learn more words. Rebecca nodded with a slightly dejected expression as she said, but I really don't have the money to send her to school right now, so she'll have to go to school later. Don't worry, Jessica is so smart. She'll be able to catch up even if she goes to school later. Luna looked at the dejected Rebecca with a hint of sympathy and heartache in her eyes. It was already difficult for a woman to make a living with her daughter, let alone send her to school. Meg took a glance at Jessica, who was playing happily with Amy and the others. She was at the best age, and being able to play with her peers at school was indeed much better than wandering on the streets and being looked down upon by passers-by, or doing some boring repetitive work at home. It was a chance to shape one's worldview, absorb knowledge, and change the trajectory of one's life. After dinner, Yarbemia and Sally took the children out to play with their kites, and Sally was responsible for cleaning up the table. 1111 rose to her feet with Lulu, and turned to Meg with a smile as she said, Thank you for your sumptuous hospitality today, Mr. Mac. We had such a great time eating and playing. I have to go look after the shop, and Lulu also has to go back to work, so we'll be going now. All right, we'll come again next time. Meg nodded with a smile as he looked on at 1111 and Lulu, who were greeting everyone in a friendly manner, before leaving. Mr. Meg, I also have something to do in the afternoon, so I'll be taking my leave now. Thank you very much for your hospitality today. Luna also rose to her feet as she turned to Meg. You're welcome, Ms. Luna. Please come again next time. Meg nodded with a smile. Luna took a couple of steps before stopping. She turned around to look at Meg, and hesitated momentarily before asking, I'm very curious about something. If you don't mind, Mr. Meg, what type of green tea did you put in the ice cream? It's Longjing green tea, a type of green tea that only I know about, Meg replied with a smile. Chapter 4:14. After sending off all of the guests, Amy sat at the entrance of the restaurant with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She was looking at the purple crystal in front of her when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned around to look at Meg, and her pointy little ears twitched playfully as a sweet smile appeared on her face. Father, the kids had a lot of fun. Thank you. It's all thanks to Amy's good hospitality. That's why they were so happy. Meg patted Amy's head with a smile. Even though it was a little tiring to have to host a party on a day off, the smile on Amy's face made all of that tiredness disappear. Amy's smile became even more vibrant as she happily shared all of the gifts she had received with Meg. Some of them were expensive gold bracelets, while others were just flowers that had been picked from the roadside. However, Amy was very happy with all of them, and didn't differentiate between them based on how expensive they were. Meg was very pleased to see this. The value of a gift was completely different from the thought behind it, and Amy was already able to understand this. She knew just how much that purple crystal meant to Jessica. He sat at the entrance of the restaurant with Amy in his arms for a while, and she fell asleep in his arms. A gentle smile appeared on Meg's face as he looked down at Amy, whose eyes were closed and whose eyelashes were trembling slightly. Boss really is a good father. If only I had a father like him. I've never seen him before, and I don't even know his name, let alone being held by him. Yarbemia stared blankly at Meg, who was sitting at the entrance with Amy in his arms, and his eyes were filled with envy. Meg carefully carried Amy upstairs and put her to bed. When he came downstairs, he saw Yarbemia tapping his fingers with his head down, seemingly deep in thought. Just as he was about to say something, Yarbemia suddenly looked up as if he had mustered up the courage to look at Meg, and asked, "Boss, can you be my father?" "Huh?" Meg's eyes widened in shock as he stared at Yarbemia. Although Yarbemia was only 17 years old, he was only in his early 30s. Being called uncle already made him feel old, and now she actually wanted to call him daddy. Is this the legendary "I treat you as a friend, but you treat me as your father"? Meg's mind was in a mess as he tried to think of a tactful way to reject Yarbemia's strange request. Boss, it's not what you think. I just want to ask. Can you hug me like a father, just like how you hug Amy? Yarbemia quickly realized that she had said something wrong, and a faint blush appeared on her face. She hurriedly waved her hands and lowered her head, not daring to look into Meg's eyes. "I've never been hugged by my father before. It must have felt very warm, right?" Sally was just about to walk out of the kitchen when she stopped in her tracks. She looked at Yarbemia's back with a pained expression. Ever since she met that frost dragon girl that night, Yarbemia's emotions had changed. Even though she tried her best not to show it, she had been spacing out more often than before. Looks like MIA really wants to be acknowledged, regardless of whether it's by the humans or by the dragons. It's just that, there's no way the dragons would accept her as a half-dragon. Sally sighed internally as she looked up at Meg. Meg looked at Yarbemia, whose shoulders were trembling slightly, and a gentle look appeared in his eyes. He hesitated momentarily before gently placing a hand on Yarbemia's head, and said with a smile, "MIA, trust me, your father will come back for you one day. When that time comes, he'll give you a warm hug, a hug that truly belongs to a father." Yarbemia felt the warmth on her head, and slowly raised her head to meet Meg's gentle gaze. A determined look appeared in her eyes, and she nodded firmly as she said, "Thank you, boss. I'm sure he'll come back. Boss really is a good person. What kind of fairy gave birth to a child like him, and why doesn't he live with them?" Sally looked at Meg, who was placing a hand on Yarbemia's head. His gentle expression made her feel quite moved, and at the same time, she was curious. "By the way, I have a guest who wants to book the entire restaurant tonight, and I've agreed. If you don't have anything else to do tonight, can you work overtime? I'll pay you separately." After calming Yarbemia down, Meg turned to the two of them with a smile. "Book the entire restaurant? Boss, didn't you say that you don't book the entire restaurant?" Yarbemia turned to Meg with a perplexed look. She still remembered how Meg had rejected Sconard's offer a few days ago. Sally was also looking at Meg with a curious expression. She wondered who it was that could make Meg continue to open the restaurant and book the entire restaurant on his day off. The City Lord is the one who booked the entire restaurant. Tonight, we're hosting representatives from the giant dragons and demons from the Demon Islands. The meeting will be hosted by the City Lord's castle, and it will be held in our restaurant. The business hours will be the same as usual. Furthermore, during normal business hours, the restaurant doesn't book the entire restaurant as that would affect the dining experience of the customers. Furthermore, there really aren't many people who can afford to book the entire restaurant. However, the City Lord's castle is a little special this time. I want to rent a portion of the restaurant's outdoor seating area. If the City Lord's castle can agree to this, it might make things easier for me, Meg explained. He didn't try to hide the reason behind his request from them. It's the City Lord. And the guest is a powerful being from the dragon race and demon race? Yarbemia's eyes widened with incredulity. There must be some conflict between the dragon race and demon race due to their territorial disputes. I just didn't think that the City Lord of Chaos City would hold the conference in Mammoth's restaurant. This has never happened before. Sally also wore an incredulous look on her face. There had always been territorial disputes between the elven race and the human race, and Chaos City had mediated on many occasions. As such, she was quite familiar with these matters. Her father had represented the elven race at the conference in the past, and all of the representatives were at least at the 9th tier or above. That's right. I really don't want to make you work on your day off, so I'll pay you 3 times the usual overtime pay. At the same time, you can also choose to order whatever you want for dinner tonight. Meg nodded with an apologetic expression. It was indeed quite infuriating to have to work on their day off. Yarbemia hurriedly shook her head and said, "Of course not. I don't have anything else to do today anyway. There's no need to pay 3 times the usual overtime pay." Chapter 4:15. So this is Chaos City. As expected, it really is the only city on the Norland continent that can compare with Rodu. Furthermore, there are all kinds of races coming and going here. What an interesting city. Within an extravagant deer carriage constructed from green tree branches, a slender hand lifted the curtains of the carriage. Blauer looked at the stream of people entering and exiting the city gate, and a smile appeared on his handsome face. The carriage was very spacious, and was being drawn by 2 brown deer that were over a head taller than normal horses. They had a pair of large black antlers on their heads, and were quite eye-catching among the long line of people waiting to enter the city. That elven girl is so beautiful. She is. I've seen elves in the past, but I've never seen such a beautiful one. All of the passers-by's eyes lit up at the sight of Blauer, and they began to discuss quietly among themselves. Bullshit. That's a fucking man. Why are you looking at me like that? A middle-aged dwarf pursed his lips, but he still murmured to himself, but he really is fucking beautiful. Sigh, looks like I really am the center of attention no matter where I go. How frustrating. Blauer lowered the curtains of the carriage and heaved a resigned sigh as he closed his eyes. The young mistress of the Brewster family is working as a waitress in a small restaurant. If news of this were to spread, all of those old geezers who are still waiting for her to replace Princess Irina would probably be so scared that their teeth would fall out. Blauer murmured to himself as the carriage slowly drove forward. He opened his mouth to yawn, and shook his head as he murmured to himself, "Forget it. I'm going to take a beauty nap for a couple of days after I get there. I can't let anything affect my recovery. City Lord, we've already made a rough estimate of Woodrow's abuse of civilians, embezzling compensation and relief funds, and allowing his nephew, Warwick, to humiliate and oppress the families of the deceased miners. At least 50 civilians have been killed, including 35 women and 5 children under the age of 10. Woodrow has embezzled over 6 million copper coins in compensation and relief funds from the miners, and we're still investigating the crimes committed by the guards and Warwick's hired thugs. The scope of the crimes has already expanded beyond the area where the families of the deceased miners are living, and the number of victims is still increasing. Within the City Lord's castle, an official looked at Michael, who was sitting behind a desk, and spoke with a grave expression. There was undisguised shock and fury on his face. City Lord, the Lord of the Grey Temple has already signed the document. Apart from the members of the Grey Temple who have to carry out their missions, the 10 elders have already gathered. They will cooperate with the City Lord's castle in the inspection of the other patrolmen's manors. Another official quickly walked in and reported. Tell them to set off right away and conduct a thorough investigation. I want to see just how many bastards like this there are in Chaos City. I want to see just how many dirty things have been going on right under our noses without us knowing. Michael clenched his fists as he spoke in a grim voice. Yes. The official hurried out of the room, and he couldn't help but pick up his pace. Chaos City was most likely going to be turned on its head this time. Continue to investigate Woodrow's case. Even though justice is already late, we have to make sure that all of the civilians know that we're always there. Have the finance department conduct an overnight investigation and calculate all of the compensation and relief funds that have been embezzled from the families of the deceased miners. At the same time, compensate all of the civilians who were killed by Woodrow and Warwick, and make sure that they're properly taken care of, Michael instructed as he turned to the official. Okay. The official nodded, turned around, and walked out quickly. If it weren't for the fact that Meg appeared today and saved that mother and daughter, things like this would have been repeated over and over again. Similar things could be happening in many places in Chaos City every day. As expected, it's not that easy to make this world a better place. Just Chaos City alone is enough to create such a problem. Looks like I have to do a lot more if I want to promote this concept to the entire Norland continent. Michael made his way over to the window, and a contemplative look appeared on his face as he looked at the tall and straight poplar tree outside. Come to think of it, I really do have to thank him for this. At the very least, he gave the City Lord's castle a chance to resolve this issue before more people were harmed. Michael thought back to the young man who had rejected him after hearing that he was the City Lord. He really was an interesting person. After Sally and Yarbemia finished cleaning up the restaurant, they both said that they had to go back to work, and that they would be back on time before the restaurant opened for business. As for the overtime pay, Meg didn't force them. He would just give them the full amount at the end of the month. In any case, this money had already been included in the City Lord's Castle's reservation fee. System, update the menu. Add ice cream to the menu. Sell it for 200 copper coins each, and there are 4 flavors to choose from. Also, rearrange the dishes on the menu. Single dishes, side dishes, desserts, drinks. Differentiate them according to their characteristics, Meg said internally as he pulled out a chair and sat down. Let me remind you once again that this system is a proper god of cookery cultivation system. It's already very considerate of me to help you add new dishes to the menu. Rearranging the dishes is too much work, so I won't do it. The system's stern voice sounded with an unquestionable tone. TSK, TSK. Tell me, how much do you want this time? 10 copper coins? 100 copper coins? Or are you going to ask for 1,000 copper coins? Meg pursed his lips in a joking manner. Please don't use money to humiliate me. Is this the kind of system I am? I'm telling you now, I don't want 1,000 copper coins from you. Only 998 copper coins. Only 998 copper coins. Take home the menu rearrangement package. The system's impassioned voice sounded as if there was a 3D surround sound system roaring at Meg. System, turn off your lousy sound system. I'm going deaf. Meg frowned. The system's performance had never disappointed him. It was impossible for it to have integrity. Host, this is my newly developed 5D surround sound system. It has an all-around sound system, and the receiver can enjoy the best sound quality. The system blabbered on unhappily. Let me understand the menu rearrangement package. Meg interrupted the system and asked calmly. The system was silent for a while before it continued. Host, please don't interrupt the system next time. This will cause confusion in my speech structure. Also, this is a very respectful behavior. Chapter 416. Of course, it's not a problem to interrupt when appropriate. It's beneficial to improve the harmonious relationship between us. The system said in all seriousness. Speak human language. Meg curled his lips. He wasn't going to fall for it. The menu area modification package includes 1 menu area modification, 5 new dishes for free, and a menu quality lifetime warranty card. This includes but is not limited to the 16 menus that the restaurant currently has. Host can also learn about the menu area modification VIP package. 1. Permanently add new dishes for free. 2. Menu area modification option. 3. Add pictures for each dish. Only 1,998 copper coins. The system quickly replied. Add pictures. Meg's eyes lit up. This was not a bad suggestion. The dishes in the restaurant were very different from the dishes in this world. Just looking at the names of the dishes would make new customers confused. If there were pictures, it would be much more intuitive. It would save a lot of trouble explaining and increase efficiency to a certain extent. System, isn't this 1,998 a little too high? How about a 50% discount? 998 will do. Meg raised his eyebrows. Host. This is already a shocking discount. Vomiting blood, a huge discount. You actually have the heart to bargain with this. The system's voice was somewhat sorrowful. Moreover, its voice became heavier as it said, moreover, even with a 50% discount, it's still $999. How can it be $998? A copper coin has been erased by you just like that. This is simply too much. I say, no matter what, you're still someone who earns hundreds of thousands a day selling vegetables. Is there a need for you to be so agitated over a copper coin? Meg raised his eyebrows. Sometimes, he still couldn't understand the greed of the system. Do you really think that selling vegetables is so profitable? Host, let me tell you, in this industry, the people who grow vegetables are the ones who suffer the most. The cultivation of seeds doesn't cost money. The construction of high-tech greenhouses doesn't cost money. The net cages don't cost money. The space transportation doesn't cost money. If I sell you 10 peas for 10 copper coins, I can only earn 1 copper coin. And I cultivate these 10 peas, from the cultivation of the seeds, to the planting, to the harvest. It takes several months to complete a round of harvesting. From the harvest, I select the best quality peas and provide them to the restaurant. In order to ensure the freshest quality, I used the extremely expensive spatial teleportation technology to directly teleport the ingredients from the place of origin to the host's refrigerator. Every single copper coin was painstakingly earned by me, therefore, please do not belittle every single copper coin. This is the hard-earned money of us farmers. The system said righteously. When Meg heard the agitated voice of the system, he almost felt guilty. He felt that he was a profiteer who exploited the farmers. However, after thinking about it carefully, he said with a strange expression, I say, system. Although the vegetables were planted by you, the fish, prawns, chickens, and ducks were raised by you, but what kind of farmer are you? You didn't even do anything yourself, and you're complaining here like crazy. I almost believed you. Cough, cough, cough. The system coughed for a while. After a while, it said awkwardly, anyway, the VIP set meal costs 1,998 copper coins. It includes selected pictures, optimized sections, and upgraded menus to become more high-end and classy. It improves the quality of the restaurant and the dining experience of the customers. You only need one VIP set meal $9.98, not a single copper coin more, Meg said decisively, leaving no room for negotiation. $9.99. I can't go any lower, the system said through gritted teeth, as if it was making a huge concession. $9.98. $9.99. The system still refused to compromise. It said somewhat angrily, Host, you earn millions of copper coins a day by cooking. Is there a need to fight with me for a single copper coin? Also, do you know how much work the VIP set meal requires? The photo shoot and selection, layout, increasing the number of menu pages, everything is taken care of by me. Yet you're biting on a single copper coin and not willing to part with it. This is my hard-earned money. In my previous life, I didn't know how difficult it was to earn money. Now that I'm earning money to support my family, I understand that money can't be spent carelessly. Therefore, 998, not a single copper coin more, Meg said righteously. The system was silent for a while. Then, it sighed and said faintly, Host, you win, 998, change the menu and bring home the VIP set meal. Very good, system. You can start your performance. A happy smile appeared on Meg's face. Although it was only 1 copper coin less, he felt as if he had earned millions of copper coins. You don't have to be too sad. After tomorrow's business hours, I should be able to gather enough money to buy a second set of strength points. Tomorrow, I'll upgrade the restaurant. Meg comforted in his heart. Host, you've made a wise choice. The system's voice suddenly became lively again. So, are you planning to give me a menu change set meal? Meg asked with a smile. Ding. 998 copper coins have been successfully deducted. The menu change VIP set meal has been delivered. No returns. The system's voice immediately sounded. Meg shook his head helplessly. This system was really obsessed with money. He looked at the menu templates that appeared in his mind. After flipping through all of them, He chose the simplest one. It was a small picture with a dish name and price, without any special effects or descriptions. Ding. Menu template selected successfully. Menu customization in progress. The goods will be delivered in 5 minutes. The system's voice sounded. Okay. Meg nodded. He stood up and began to wonder where the meeting would be tonight. Ideally, a round-table meeting would be more impressive. However, the system's rental price of 10,000 copper coins made Meg lose interest. The high cost went against his philosophy of making money. After standing in the middle of the restaurant and thinking for a while, Meg arranged the tables into 5 groups with a distance of about 2 meters. He also arranged a table at the front for the host of the meeting. The simple and practical arrangement ensured that each participant had a table. Sitting opposite each other was also very suitable for the meeting. The 2-meter distance allowed each participant to have some space to think calmly. The other tables and chairs were moved to the corner by Meg. Overall, the restaurant still looked very spacious and comfortable. There shouldn't be any problems like this. Hopefully, their meeting will be more elegant and won't cause any damage to the restaurant. Meg clapped his hands and thought worriedly in his heart. A giant dragon on one side and a demon on the other. Neither of them was a kind race. If they fought because of a disagreement, the restaurant would not be able to withstand their torment. After setting up the table, Meg went into the kitchen and began to prepare the ingredients for the meeting. Michael was not a city lord who did as he pleased. The reason he chose Immerse as the meeting location and agreed to so many conditions was definitely not because his grilled fish could alleviate his daughter's illness. It was because he thought that Immerse could promote this meeting. And all that Immerse had was delicious food. Meg was very clear about this. Chapter 4:17. This is the place, right? The golden dragon's golden eyes fell on Immerse, which was situated at the very corner of the plaza. He folded his massive wings, and golden light flashed as he transformed into a burly man in golden armor. He plummeted from over 100 meters into the air like a javelin, crashing heavily into the entrance of Immerse restaurant. Bam! A muffled thump erupted as the ground tremored violently. A massive crater half a meter deep appeared in the ground in front of the restaurant, and smoke and dust rose into the air as if it had been struck by a bomb. The newly constructed Morbi building next to the restaurant tremored violently, as if it were going to collapse at any moment. All of the passers-by looked on with shock in their eyes, wondering why this giant dragon had descended from the sky. Could it be that the restaurant in the corner had angered him? What's that? In the kitchen, Meg also turned toward the entrance of the restaurant with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Even though the tremors in the restaurant weren't very strong, he was still quite curious about who had arrived. Is someone here to cause trouble? Didn't the city lord's castle book the entire restaurant today? Yarbemir looked outside with a surprised expression. There was a cloud of dust outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, so he couldn't see what had fallen. It's a giant dragon, a very powerful giant dragon, Sally said in a soft voice. She could sense the giant dragon's aura, and it was at least a 9th-tier giant dragon. It was most likely here to attend the conference today. Immerse, this is the place. Why did Chaos City choose such a small restaurant? Are they looking down on us giant dragons? A tall and burly man in golden armor strode out of the crater. He appeared to be in his 40s, and had a square face. Even his eyebrows were rectangular, and his golden buzz cut shimmered under the setting sun as if it had been forged from pure gold. TSK, Jinx, when are you going to learn how to appear like a gentleman? Right at this moment, a cold voice rang out, and a huge black bat slowly glided over. It folded its wings, and a figure landed at the entrance of the restaurant. It looked at the golden-armored man with a resigned expression, and said, "I'm only here for a meeting today. You're showing up like a low-grade magic beast, and it doesn't show how powerful you are at all." The man was wearing a black robe with a long black cloak behind him. He was tall and looked to be in his 30s. He had a high nose bridge and a pair of sapphire blue eyes. His shiny hair was neatly combed back, and his hands were behind his back. He stood upright, looking rather gentlemanly. However, his face was pale without a trace of blood, and when he grinned, Two small sharp fangs could be seen. Dracula, big bat, you're still as annoying as ever. Do you want to have a taste of my fist today? Jinx looked at the pale young man, and clenched his fists as he took a step forward, and the crisp sound of his knuckles cracking could be heard. Dracula shook his head apologetically as he looked at Jinx, and said, "The blood of the golden dragon reeks of money. I really can't bring myself to taste your fist. Otherwise, as a gentleman, I would feel bad if I couldn't suck your blood dry since you requested it." Dracula shook his head apologetically. "You sure talk big. Vampires may be one of the 10 major demon races, but there hasn't been any powerful 10th-tier demon patriarchs in recent years, right? The lava demon also slowly disappeared in the same way. Who's next?" Right at this moment, a cold voice sounded. A large snowflake appeared on the ground, and a figure in a silver cape silently appeared, looking at Dracula with a cold expression. "Fuck you, Fox. You dared to attack me last time. I'm going to kick you in the balls today." A somewhat violent voice sounded, and a fat figure shot out from a black beast not far away. It flew over like a black iron ball, and smashed towards Fox, who had just appeared. "Heh, this sure is lively. Should I join in as well? But if I destroy City Lord Michael's Aiden Square, he'll probably jump up and beat me up, right?" Another flaming dragon that was over 100 meters in length appeared in the air, and it looked down at everyone down below with an intrigued expression. "Long time no see, Havid. I didn't think you'd be one of the representatives of the giant dragon race." The space warped, and a spider-like demon with a humanoid body and 8 long black legs appeared. It looked at the flaming dragon with a hint of surprise in its eyes. "What, Gustav? Do you want to fight me again this time? If you weren't always using your spatial magic to escape, I wouldn't mind fighting you." Havid looked at the demon that was over 10 meters tall, and its sharp spider legs were also over 10 meters in length. Battle intent welled up in his red eyes, and it was clear that he was going to charge forward and engage in battle. "I'm not here to fight you. If you want to fight, you'll have plenty of opportunities to do so after this negotiation concludes." Gustav shook his head as he looked down at the giant ball flying toward Fox with a disdainful look on his face. "That Tauros guy really isn't that smart. But then again, there aren't many smart beings in the abyssal race either. Mph, looks like I didn't teach you a lesson last time. Seeing as you attacked first, you're going to have to face my wrath." Fox raised his head and looked at the black sphere that was flying towards him. Sharp spikes had already appeared on the surface of the sphere. Each spike was more than a meter long, and it was spinning rapidly as it flew towards him like a sea urchin. "True power of ice, domain." Fox raised a hand as he spoke in a cold voice. A burst of bright silver light appeared over his hand, and a square of frozen space appeared before him. The surface of the frozen space quickly froze over, trapping the black ball within. The black ball revolved violently within the frozen space, emitting a piercing screeching sound. The frozen space tremored violently, but it showed no signs of being damaged. "You little bastard. Let me out if you dare." Tauro's enraged voice rang out from within the frozen space. "You're like a coward, just stay in that block of ice. I don't need you for today's negotiation anyway." Fox chuckled coldly as he continued to control his frost domain. Ding. Chapter 418. All of the giant dragons and demons fell silent for a split second, and all of them turned to look at Amy with a hint of surprise and befuddlement. Why would a little half-elf girl appear in this conference venue? Even Tauros and Fox, who were still in the midst of their battle, had temporarily stopped. "You can continue, but don't worry about me. I just woke up, and I'm just here to watch the show. I've never seen a battle between a giant dragon and a demon before." Amy hurriedly waved her hands at the sight of everyone who had suddenly stopped fighting. She then entered the restaurant and quickly pulled out a small stool. She sat down with Ugly Duckling in her arms and looked on with anticipation in her eyes. "Meow, meow." Ugly Duckling let out a few cries and extended its little paws as if it were demonstrating its might. It wasn't fearful in the slightest. Everyone's eyes widened. They didn't think that a little girl and a kitten would be able to watch the show. Not only were they not fearful in the slightest, they were even asking them to continue. The aggressive tauros and fox suddenly lost all desire to continue this duel. The domain of ice and frost shattered, and the spiked orb flew back, transforming into a stout middle-aged man in a suit of black spiked armor. He was also wielding a massive black axe that was as tall as a grown man. The flaming dragon folded its wings and fell from the sky like a meteor. After falling, it turned into a tall and thin flaming man. His face was also fiery red, and his eyes were dancing with fire. There were also flames dancing on his body. The half-human, half-spider spatial demon also appeared on the ground, transforming into a bald dwarf that was half as tall as a grown man. He hovered half a meter in the air, and his clothes were so long that they almost touched the ground, creating a rather peculiar sight to behold. The 3 giant dragons and 3 demons stood facing one another on either side of the restaurant, glaring at each other with hostility in their eyes. However, neither of them displayed any intention to attack, and a peculiar silence ensued. Remi watched with interest for a while, but both sides just stood there without moving. They didn't fight or argue. After waiting for a while, she couldn't help but ask softly, "I say, are you guys still going to fight? If not, I'm going to go eat." "Little girl, you're so cute." Dracula turned to look at Amy and couldn't help but smile, revealing a pair of sharp fangs. "Uncle Bat, you're very cute too, especially those sharp teeth. Are they for eating meat?" Amy looked at Dracula with a serious expression. Dracula was stunned when he saw the serious expression on Amy's little face. Usually, children of other races would cry when they saw his sharp teeth. He did not expect this little girl to say that his teeth were cute. Although the nickname Uncle Bat was a little strange, why did it sound so nice coming from her? "This isn't for eating meat, it's for sucking blood. It's the symbol of the vampire's glory. It only takes me 1 second to suck all the blood out of a human." Dracula grinned. He didn't believe that there was a child in this world who wasn't afraid of him. "Is that awesome?" Amy's eyes lit up as she looked at Dracula with admiration. "Great. Great. Little girl, aren't you afraid of me? I can suck human blood." Dracula glared at her. This little girl's brain circuit was a little different from the average child's. "Mosquitoes can suck blood too, but I'm not afraid of them at all. I just have to raise my hand and pat them lightly, and they'll die. I'm not afraid of them at all." Amy looked at Dracula with a serious expression and shook her head. "What? You're comparing me to a lowly mosquito that can't even be considered a magic beast? I'm a noble vampire." Dracula glared at Amy with an expression of disbelief, but his gentlemanly demeanor allowed him to continue to control his emotions. "Then is Uncle Bat a large mosquito that was transformed from a mosquito?" Amy continued to ask curiously. "PFFF. Dracula threw up a mouthful of blood. "Uncle Bat, are you all right? Why don't you suck all this blood back? Otherwise, wouldn't we have eaten lunch for nothing?" Amy looked at the puddle of blood in front of Dracula with a concerned expression. PFFF. Dracula couldn't help but throw up another mouthful of blood. "All right, it doesn't matter. You won't die from throwing up blood anyway." Amy looked at Dracula with a comforting smile and said, "Besides, even though our restaurant doesn't sell blood, Father can make a lot of delicious food. It's definitely better than fresh blood. As a noble vampire, I definitely won't eat human food." Dracula calmed himself down slightly and looked at Amy with a proud expression. "That's a pity. I thought only idiots wouldn't want to eat Father's food." Amy shrugged with a look of pity. Dracula felt his chest churn, and he felt the urge to throw up blood again. If it weren't for Amy's sincere expression of pity, he would definitely have thought that she was scolding him. Even though it sounded more or less the same now, there was no reason for him to flare up. It's really difficult to be a gentleman. Dracula looked up at the sky and thought to himself with a resigned expression. He suddenly had the urge to beat someone up. "Ha ha ha, little girl, you're so funny. You're such a cute little girl." Jinx looked at Amy and laughed heartily. He was always at a disadvantage when arguing with Dracula. Now that he was being scolded by a little girl to the point of vomiting blood, he felt really good. "Thank you, Uncle Jinx. Is your hair really made of gold? Why are all of them standing up like porcupines? Are you worried that someone will rob your hair if you go out on the streets like this?" Amy turned to Jinx with a curious look on her face. The smile on Jinx's face stiffened. These questions were really sharp. He suddenly understood why Dracula was throwing up blood. This little girl was really not simple. Uncle Eight-Legged Spider, why are your clothes so long? Actually, they look even shorter like this. Uncle Hedgehog, that pig of yours was stomped into the ground by you, and it hasn't climbed back up yet. Don't play such a dangerous game next time. Look at how pitiful it is. Don't you know how heavy you are? Uncle Snowman, your magic was so cool, but it still pales in comparison to my master's. Uncle Fireman, did you eat chili before coming here? Why can't the fire on your body be extinguished? If that's the case, you can't enter the restaurant. Amy commented on everyone one by one, and her little face was filled with joy from making new friends. Chapter 419. The little guy didn't seem to have any ill intentions, but his words made people want to beat him up, especially when Fox was already gathering silver frost magic in his hand. He looked at Amy coldly, as if he was going to attack at any moment. I'm sorry. If Amy has offended you, I hope you can forgive her. Meg quickly walked out of the restaurant and stood in front of Amy. He didn't expect Amy to be so direct and mean. However, these were the big shots who represented the dragons and demons in the negotiation, so it wouldn't be good to offend them. After all, they still had to hold the meeting at the restaurant tonight. So, are you going to take my attack for her, or do you want me to see that so-called master of hers who is much more powerful than me? Fox glared at Mag with a cold expression, and a burst of frost rose up from beneath his feet. It transformed into an ice crystal dragon that was as thick as a water bucket, and pounced toward Mag. Fox, don't you think you're going a little overboard? A little girl's words carry no harm. It's not very gentlemanly of you to take them seriously. Dracula pursed his lips at Fox. He glanced at the giant ice crystal dragon, and a black staff appeared in his hand. It seemed like he was about to attack. Mag's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Fox and the oncoming ice dragon. He didn't think that this guy would suddenly attack. At the very least, a 9th tier being wasn't something that he could defend himself against. He shielded Amy with one hand as he racked his brains for a way to escape. However, if it weren't for the City Lord or Urian, it would be virtually impossible for him to evade this attack. Be careful. In the restaurant, Sally also let out a soft cry. She waved her hand, and 2 pillars of water shot out from her hand toward the giant ice crystal dragon. Boss, Amy. Yabemia also ran toward the restaurant door anxiously. Overboard. How can the dignity of the frost dragon race be blasphemed by others? Besides, you're a half-elf, a useless and lowly hybrid race. It was a mistake to come to this world. Fox looked at Meg and Amy behind Meg with a mocking expression on his face. Wrong. Yabemia, who had just run to the door, stood still as if she had been struck by lightning when she heard Fox's words. She had heard the same words many times, but this time, it came from the mouth of a giant dragon. The impact on her was on a completely different level. It was as if something in her heart had suddenly shattered. Fox, you're going overboard with your words. We golden dragons have never thought that mixed blood races are inferior to humans. Rankster is a mixed blood between the golden dragon tribe and your frost tribe. Didn't he still become your chief? Jinx said with a displeased frown. Fox ignored Jinx as he continued to stare at Meg. Although it would be a little troublesome to kill someone in Chaos City, he had already found a reason to do so, so it shouldn't be a big problem. With his status, Chaos City most likely wouldn't fall out with him. Sally's 2 pillars of water crashed into the frost dragon first. A dull thump erupted, and the frost dragon continued to charge toward Meg with unstoppable force. It was completely unimpeded as it charged toward Meg with its mouth wide open. Dracula took a glance at Fox before raising his staff, upon which a black magic light appeared. However, at such a close distance, he couldn't guarantee that the father and daughter duo would be unscathed, so he could only do his best. Right at that moment, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded beside everyone's ears like a clap of thunder. Who gave my disciple the right to teach her a lesson? The temperature abruptly plummeted, and the flames on Havid's body were instantly snuffed out. He even shuddered. Meanwhile, the frost dragon that was charging toward Meg abruptly stopped less than a meter away from Meg. It was as if it had been immobilized by an invisible force. Urian, how is this possible? Fox's eyes widened with incredulity as he stared at Julian, who had just emerged from a nearby magic potion shop. Bam! The frost dragon exploded into shards of ice, and Julian appeared in front of Meg in the blink of an eye. Fox, it's been a few years since we last met, but you still haven't improved at all. Julian's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Fox, and he said in a cold and hoarse voice, "Tell me, is my disciple right? Is the disparity between us very small or very large?" All of the giant dragons and demons stared at Julian with shock and wariness in their eyes. This was the 10th tier magic caster, Julian, the Lord of Ice. In this world, powerful beings with nothing to lose were the most terrifying. Coincidentally, Urian, who had no ties in this world, was one of them. The other was Crassus, who had fought with him for his entire life. These two were known as the two great magic casters who couldn't be messed with in the magic world because they were fearless. It was said that the two of them had just accepted the same disciple, and Julian had just said that this little half-elf girl was his disciple, which meant that this little girl was also Crassus' disciple. An icy aura enveloped everyone present, and the chill seeped into their bones, making them not dare to act rashly. Even though there was only a first-tier difference between them, they had to admit that they could feel the aura of death in that instant. This was the difference between a top 10th tier magic caster and a 9th tier magic caster. Even if they were standing right next to a long-range magic caster, they couldn't be sure that they could kill him before he attacked. Fox's face was a little pale. He had heard that Julian was in Chaos City, and that he had accepted a disciple, but the conflict between the dragons and demons had taken up almost all of his attention. On the other hand, he had also been paying attention to Elizabeth's movements, so he didn't know where Julian lived or who his disciple was. However, he didn't think that his disciple would be a half-elf. One had to realize that half-elves had very poor aptitude, and Julian and Crassus were the most picky of all magic casters. Meg looked at the stooped Julian, and heaved an internal sigh of relief. At the same time, he slowly clenched his fists. As expected, he had to improve his power as soon as possible. That way, he wouldn't have to wait for others to protect him the next time he stood in front of Amy. "Master Turtle, this Uncle Yeti is a bad guy. He's going to beat up Amy." Amy came out from behind Meg and pointed at Fox. "You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.